It's one of the most porous and dangerous border areas in the world. The frontier between Afghanistan and Pakistan, often the scene of cross-border attacks. The American and Afghan governments consider the border to be the focal point of the Haqqani network. Its fighters are affiliated to the Taliban. They are accused of orchestrating some of the deadliest attacks against US soldiers over the last 17 years of war in Afghanistan. Facing mounting international pressure and US financial sanctions, the Pakistanis are sealing the border, building a steel fence designed to stop the flow of weapons.
Measles outbreak in the Pacific Northwest is spreading fear among many parents. Washington State has declared a public health emergency. There are now 35 cases in Clark County alone. It's part of a worsening measles problem across the country. Jamie Yukas is outside a Walmart in Vancouver, Washington, one of more than 50 places confirmed as a public exposure location. Jamie, good morning.
Good morning. It's places like this Walmart, schools, churches, and grocery stores where people may have been exposed. Measles has an infection rate of 90% for anyone exposed and not immunized, with no visible symptoms for weeks.
The Bank of England is telling President Maduro that he cannot have access to his country's gold reserves, worth more than $1 billion, by the way, because they say that he's not the country's president anymore, as proclaimed by the Trump administration. Follow? Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury today, in the form of Secretary of State Mnuchin, also announced sanctions against Citgo, a move that also seems to be intended toward giving control of the Venezuelan company to Juan Guaido, who is, according to the United States, the new proclaimed president of Venezuela.
It's been almost 15 years since Michael Jackson was acquitted of child molestation charges.
But despite being found not guilty, a new documentary, which is set to premiere at the Sundance Film Festival next week, I believe.
No, today.
Is it today? Oh, it is today.
It's the other film that we're talking about today.
Next week, sorry. Today is said to feature 2 fresh allegations of child abuse.
And as the news provokes fury within the Jackson estate, we're now joined by Michael's close friend, and that is Mark Lester. And Michael, you and he became friendly because he was a great fan of the film Oliver, of which you had the principal role.
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
And was that, how flattering was that for you?
Oh, it was immensely flattering.
Compramos cabello. Mami, compramos cabello. Venga, yo le doy el valor del cabello que podemos hacer. Mami, que pueden decir cabello para eso comprar. Ya tuvieron que llegar al grado más extremo.
This shows the location where we are right now. We're actually sitting right here.
The income from the satellite network allowed Baker to launch his third big innovation, which was creating a Christian Disneyland on the border of North and South Carolina, what became Heritage USA.
For the backlash that is growing for Tom Brokaw, the NBC News veteran criticized for comments he made about Hispanics and the way he's apologizing. Lindsay Davis is here with that story for us. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Robin. Criticism was harsh and swift after the former nightly news anchor implied that Latinos need to do a better job of assimilating. Critics pounced, calling his comments not only racially insensitive, but also inaccurate. Then he was taken to task for what was deemed an unapologetic apology.
And well, Congressman Steve King is back on his home turf this weekend and fighting back against claims that he has defended white supremacy. The backlash erupting after an interview the congressman gave to the New York Times, questioning why terms like white nationalists and white supremacists were offensive. The comments led King's own party leaders to strip him of his committee assignments. At a town hall, the Iowa Republican continued to claim that he's not a racist. Here now is CNN's Sarah Seidner.
There are Confederate monuments in more than half of North Carolina's 100 counties. In fact, several of the monuments are here in the Triad.
The counties in our area that have markers are shaded on this map. Groups in several counties have called for the monuments to be removed.
That includes Winston-Salem. The city is asking for a statue on private property to be removed tonight. The owner says that they plan to do whatever they can to keep the statue in its place.
Our Chief King is live in downtown Winston-Salem tonight. tonight with the latest reaction to this controversy. Steve?
Turning now to the group that instigated the Covington incident, the Black Hebrew Israelites. Here they are in Washington, D.C., yelling at the high school students.
Let's make America great again. A bunch of child molested.
Look at all these dusty crackers with that racist garbage on. That's right.
A bunch of incest babies. The biggest terrorist on the face of this earth is the pale-faced man, woman, and child.
The Black Hebrew Israelites are described as a black nationalist hate group with militant overtones. They believe blacks are the true descendants of the biblical Israelites, and many of their sects are anti-white. Many here on the East Coast pretty familiar with the group, who dress up in robes and preach their teachings on street corners. I happened to catch up with them in Philly about 2 years ago.
Welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. Hello and this is Black Minds News. I'm your host, Mr. Blows Your Minds, and this channel is to report, articulate, communicate, transmit, translate, relate, unveil, decode, spread the news, whether it's by news, video, websites, or quotes from publications. As I articulate these information, I ask that the creator of the universe be here, heart, mind, soul, and spirit. Because why? The truth don't need no partner. As a descendant of the greatest people who created the greatest so-called land they call the United States, what is the greatest country in the world, we give honor on this channel. And you know what my motto is? I'm never going to tell you what I heard. I'm only going to tell you what I know. Once again, it's on. It's another thought-provoking show. Again, you know what I'm saying? After yesterday putting in that 4-hour show, right? Didn't really plan on making it that long, y'all. But again, they blocked it from worldwide. So again, this time I had to commentate. Lucky I didn't have to do it the first time, right? So maybe I had that intuition knowing not to do that. But first and foremost, before we get into all that, want to say what's good to fam, subscribers in the house. Should be here live, catching it again, you know, sporadic on time. You never know when Mr. Blow Your Mind gonna pop up. Just be having a notification, knowing that you can get the notification so that you can, because you know they always altering my show anyway. So you know, anyway, I want to say good, what's good to you. Passerbys, welcome to the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. It's always a grand opening over here. Go down the aisle, see something you might like. Hit that like button, that dislike button, put a comment in there. You can also subscribe. Agents. So what you're going to do is just keep taking it down and then keep me at a certain level, right? Man, boy. Boy, the documentation I've been stacking up on y'all. But anyway, we're going to get to that eventually one of these days. So, again, once again, it's another thought-provoking live show. Again, you know what I do. I sift through the internet because, you know, on the bubble is always something going on. It's always going on, right? You can always find something to do, right? It's kind of like on the stroll, right? Those, you know, those strolls, them corners, you know what I'm saying, them hot spots, right? You know what I'm saying? Late night, you know what I'm saying? Those who do that kind of thing, there's always something happening on them strips, right? Well, it's kind of like in the world, right? No matter where you go, pick a spot, blindfold, put a finger there, you could find something going on because, again, 10 billion people on the planet. That's what I said, 10 billion, not 7, right? So with 10 billion people, there's always something going on. And so, again, there's, you know, Black Minds TV, which is Black Minds News. We go through and sift for some of the things that might be relevant and irrelevant to you. So, again, like I was saying, I had to put in that 4-hour. Didn't mean to make it so long, but again, that's just the way it went. Spirit took me there. Again, I had to elaborate on a lot of the things in there. Hopefully for those who did see that, you enjoyed. Was well put in again, yet they still found a way to even try to put some restrictions. After I went back and took off what they claimed that made it banned, went back and they still, because again, they're trying to keep this channel suppressed, right? And you know why, the reason why that is, right? because I was the one prophetically. I'm going to sit here and state it for those who ain't never heard it. I prophetically said about 5 years ago. Most of y'all, the reason why you subscribe to my channel, you know what I'm talking about. That is the biggest issue of the moment for them right now. Right? And due to the simple fact that, again, as long as we didn't know, they were working towards it. But again, once we start to know, it became an issue, right? So I'm paying the cost for that, right? So only those who should be happen to hear me at this point in time, I guess you're some of the few and chosen, right? So I appreciate when you're here and do what you do, right? So again, once in a while, we'll ask you to hold something just for the fact that I need something to kind of make this channel, again, fight against the grain, right? They got it pretty much. You know, see, the thing is, you remember those who've been here who are avid watchers of the show, when I did that particular show that talked about how the congressional hearing that took place, right? And there was a lot of stuff that had been revealed about this thing that I'm talking about. Oh, that is real. See, and the thing is, a lot of our people out here don't actually know that, right? They think a lot of it has to do with, again, let's say, for instance, look at certain numbers and other numbers don't match. I'm going to make a particular show about that eventually because, again, I think we all need to look at that because, again, a lot of people, you know, channels are being suppressed, even though they look like they got certain numbers. But, again, it's not even just the numbers. Think about it this person, okay? You know, those who are part of the partnership and getting checks. You're not getting all your money, right? Right? Let's say you should have 100,000 subscribers, right? Say you have 1 million subscribers. But it seems like on your videos only get about 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, period. What happened to the rest of your peoples? So you're assuming nobody is really come to see. Maybe you being stuck up without a gun. Think about it. Maybe you getting stuck up without a gun. One day we're going to talk about that on this show. So anyway, let's get into the show. Again, you know, I'm always going to talk about that because, again, I'm the most suppressed show in the Black Corner, right? You don't go to 225 views, 50,000 views plus, you know what I'm saying? And then to get to the point, you can't get past 100. They don't think that's obvious? Oh, wait a minute. Let me say, y'all don't think that's obvious? So anyway, let me go and get on to the show. It is what it is, right? All right, so, you know, this particular aspect right here is just to the simple fact that, you know, it's that time of the year, you know what I'm saying? But the thing, I looked at this story that seemed a little strange. I mean, we just, for those who are getting some kind of like snow or cold, right? It's like, you know, it's like, you know, again, like I said, if you've been around a little bit, you've been around many suns and many moons, you know, winter had a developing aspect to it. It didn't just pop up on you like that and bam, it was just cold and all the snow at one time. It was a transformation. So now it's just kind of like this one big dump, cold come out of nowhere, and it's like, okay, now this is winter. But we didn't see no, you know, transformation of it, right? So again, I seen this story and I said, well, okay, I get that when the weather gets like this, there's the possibilities of everybody contracting some kind of cold. You know, you remember a couple of days ago, Mr. Blow Your Mind had the sniffles out of nowhere. I don't know where that came from, right? The sniffles came out of there where I kept talking, was doing that, right? So again, but anyway, you know, I'm back in, I'm 100 now. So, but again, something that they talking about, then I said, damn, you know what I'm saying? I pay attention as a whiteologist. They say some things, they got a connotative language, and I was like, damn, okay, what's that? Right? Your flag should come up. See, over here you get to learn to get your flag to be raised. You know what I'm saying? When people say some things and the square peg don't fit in the round hole, your flag should go up. Like, what's that? Right? You know what I'm saying? Somebody talking again, you know, being able to read somebody, right? That's an innate skill. That's an intuition skill to be able to read people, right? So when they do certain things, the flag's supposed to go up. And so when I seen this, I was like, okay, what's this about? So let me show you what I'm talking about. We'll be right back. Check this out. I hope everything getting started on the right spot tonight. Let's see how it goes. Let's see how this is going to work tonight.
Many parents. Washington State has declared a public health emergency. There are now 35 cases in Clark County alone. It's part of a worsening measles problem across the country. Jamie Yukas is outside a Walmart in Vancouver, Washington, one of more than 50 places confirmed as a public exposure location. Jamie, good morning.
Good morning. It's places like this Walmart, schools, churches, and grocery stores where people may have been exposed. Measles has an infection rate of 90% for anyone exposed and not immunized, with no visible symptoms for weeks. This is what the measles looks like. It's not just uncomfortable, it can be deadly. Studies show almost 30% of children younger than 5 who get the measles will have to be hospitalized. Parents are concerned, like mother of 3, Miranda Smith.
It's their lives on the line, honestly. If they're not vaccinated and something like this happens, then what am I going to do to save them?
The 35 confirmed cases in Washington State prompted Governor Jay Inslee to declare a state of emergency.
This can be a serious disease, and you need to get on top of these things quickly to prevent really significant spread.
18 states, including Washington, allow parents to decide not to vaccinate their children due to moral, personal, or other beliefs. There were nearly 350 measles cases recorded last year in 26 states and the District of Columbia, the second greatest number since the disease was eliminated in the year 2000. New York State is facing its worst outbreak in decades with more than 200 cases.
It's very hard to change people's minds, especially when you're talking about the health of their children.
Belima Marcus is a nurse practitioner in New York working to combat misinformation that claims vaccines cause cancer, diabetes, and autism, all disproven by the CDC. She says this anti-vaccination pamphlet has been distributed throughout Brooklyn's ultra-Orthodox Jewish community, where 62 children have contracted the disease.
I think that percentage is higher in the Orthodox communities due to all of the propaganda and fear tactics. There are so many pieces of misinformation, some outright lies that, when put all together, reveal a very terrifying picture of vaccination.
The virus is spread through the air and lingers. If one sick child coughs in a room and leaves, another unvaccinated person can still be exposed hours later. Officials now worry the virus will spread to other large metropolitan areas.
What types of things are you doing to contain it?
We're having our children stay home for a number of days. We're asking people actually to be diagnosed in their homes, not actually to go to the doctor's office, because that can infect people in the office.
Now, if children get the measles vaccine, they're 95% protected. Washington State has introduced legislation to remove the personal vaccination exemption, but it's already facing some opposition from some parents who feel the bill takes away their freedom. Bianna?
Jamie, thank you. And people have such strong feelings about this. It's one thing to protect your own freedoms. It's another to infringe on other people's health. Right?
Yeah, and the science is very clear on this, that vaccines are safe.
Yeah, she said 95%. That's not 100%. That 5% can be a matter of life and death for some small children.
On the question of the measles, but on the question of a link between vaccinations and autism, the CDC in 2013 says there is no link.
Yeah. What did you say, Nora? The definition of fake news, right?
Well, those pamphlets that people are handing out is really disturbing, and I'm glad we showed that.
Yeah.
All right. So they're talking about measles. A little epidemic of measles have been jumping out there. Again, it started in one little place up in Washington. Then they say it got to like 36 states. Like, how's it spreading like that? Huh? Think about that. What I mean, so you talking about you got some over in this place, and then all of a sudden now it's like at 36 places. So again, you're putting a heightened. Remember back in the day, they talk about we on orange, level orange, and red and yellow, right? So they put this out there again because, again, a lot of people, right? A lot of people have taken the road as to not trusting vaccinations, right? So basically, there's a lot of children out here who are not vaccinated because, again, you know, more of a conscious time, right? A lot of people are conscious these days, and so they're not so, you know, they're very apprehensive about some of the things because, again, you had this outbreak that came of the children having autism, right? And some people had said that there's allegedly they say that it is something to do with vaccination that causes it. Now again, will they ever come out and change it? Because again, they want to change that the CDC, right, says that back in 2013 that there was no found evidence. Well, if they would ever tell the truth, think about it from this perspective. If they ever told the truth and said that if it did, then what would happen to all the rest of the vaccination industries and the companies that, you know, create certain vaccination? Then they would make no business, right? So, you know, it's kind of like, even if it was, do you think they would tell the damn truth? Really? Are we supposed to believe that? And we see that there's about, according to this video, it said that there's about 18 states that allow, you know, you to actually say you don't want to give your child no immunization, right? You can have those sheets and stuff, right? So there's about only 18 of that. And I remember back in the days when somebody got the measles, right? Matter of fact, chicken pox and all that. Family-wise, what you do is you send the kids over to the other place, like you go to your cousin's house, and they got chicken pox, and shit, after about a little while, you got chicken pox. When they clean up, you going through it because they had it before you, or if you gave it to them, or how vice versa, right? That's how it used to be. And basically, when you look at the history of vaccinations in this land, it came from our ancestors, right? You know, those, again, I know a lot of people having a problem with this DOS, right? They thinking that say DOS is somehow people are brainwashed to thinking that they like, what's it called, institutionalized, right? They say they think that we're institutionalized because we're saying DOS. No, let me give it to you straight. Anybody who advocates and say they tied to the bloodline and claw for that, how could they be brainwashed? See, that's those people who, again, who are kind of, you know, fragile of mind, who don't want to have any ties to our ancestors and land. And that's what we're really advocating for. It's just we give honor and respect to that which gave before us, and we don't try to downplay it just for the simple fact that we just want to cause the continent, right? That's not saying that we don't acknowledge that the continent is part of the family tree, but we've been here for some, you know, some generations now, right? We've been here for some period of time, and so we give honor to that which established how we are still here to this day. And it is through them that they learned in this country about vaccinations, about knowing when somebody has something, take a little some of that and pricking and prodding in you. Again, that was a invention we showed them. Where was you know, again, what else in this country we haven't give? You understand? They learned a lot of their medical association, their so-called tactics and medical breakthroughs off of the bodies of our ancestors, right? So with that being said, you know, that's just wanted to bring that as some information. Again, they say that's some measles, but again, you got to remember, you know, again, the people not doing vaccinations. So again, you know, they maybe have to heighten it up. Not saying that it may not be true, but again, you know, again, like I said, a lot of people are not vaccinated. And again, there's a different generation out here. There's the Generation X, who are becoming grandparents now, and then there's, you know what I'm saying? And so they're a little bit more conscious than those that was a little before. Not saying that they weren't, but again, you know, if you know what I'm talking about, those who were the baby boomers, and then, you know, a little bit not as into making those stances they should have, but Gen X, damn it, takes that square, and they say they ain't playing that, right? And so they'll take that because they'll do the research and so forth. And again, so again, so you're going to have a segment of society out here who are not really trusted that, because again, you know, you're putting something directly into somebody's body, and we have to be trusting that what you're giving is supposed to be what you say it is. And it's not through trial and error, and then when people are dying and getting sick, and then you come out, and then again, we don't never really hear you say whether it was a botch or not, right? But anyway, that's some information out there for those who might have children or just in self. Because there's some grown folks out here who ain't never had it, which I think that's kind of crazy, right? I think that's why I say when we were coming up, you took somebody over there so they did have it. I know some grown folks who ain't never had certain things. It's like, if you probably got that now, you probably would, you know, die from something like that, right? So, you know, go out there and make sure you protect yourself while y'all out there, fam. All right, so this video here coming up here, I put it like this, y'all. I have to ask you the question. You know what I'm saying? You know, So I guess we all been there sometimes, right? And sometimes it may not be in this form or fashion, but you know, you on a public, let's say something that has transportation, and you don't really get to really pick and choose. I mean, you are selected to be able to, you know, seat, right, and be on something, and then you have to be having people next to you. I've been on the subway, you know, right? We've been on the subway, the train, the L, the plane, the bus, right? And then there's just, you know, some people that, you know, maybe a little bit, you know what I'm saying, a little hefty, right? They're a little bit hefty, right? They got some girth on them, right? And they spill over into your space, right? You know what I'm saying? And the polite thing to do, again, as long if, you know, I guess if it's not too overbearing, I mean, you either deal with it, because, again, sometimes people can't just help for the simple fact that, you know, they is what they is, right? And that's just what it is. You may observe and be like, man, how'd you get like that? I seen a video, matter of fact, the other day. I got to talk after I come back from after showing the video. But, So what do? You know, sometimes you ever been on, you know, fuck it, let me play this and then come back, because I'm gonna get it away. I don't want to get it away. So check this out, and we'll be right back.
Couldn't sell that shit.
Oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to do this for the next 4 hours. It's just impossible because they're squishing me like friggin', it's just unbelievable. Yeah, I flew with Miles, I don't have my choice. Where are you? Yeah, me too. I'm stuck, but at least they'll keep me warm.
Bitch, please, okay?
They have a seat.
Where?
They have a window.
Find me a window. Get me out of here. I gotta call you back, babe. I can't do this. Well, I eat salad, okay?
Ladies and gentlemen, when you find your seat, if you wouldn't mind stepping out of the aisle to allow those passengers behind you to pass. Thank you so much. This will expedite our boarding process. Thank you.
Excuse me. Can you find her another seat? Because I will not be verbally abused by this bitch or anybody else.
Okay. Yes.
I will not be verbally abused by anybody.
Okay.
I'm not tolerating it.
I can't sit here because there's both so big on left and right.
ashamed of yourself, man. What you're doing is so terrible. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, I'm not politically correct.
You're not politically correct.
I'm not
Make America great again. That's an example.
Why don't you sit in between those two big things?
Bitch, kiss my fat ass, okay? Who do I report her to?
Why don't we talk to my water, sir?
Can you have the bursar come back? I would like to report, and I would like to file a report against her. As a platinum member, I don't tolerate this shit from nobody. I mean, I travel every week, and this is the first time I've ever put up with this crap, and I'm not having it.
I understand completely.
I am not starting my new year off with this type of negativity.
I'll go get my bursar right away.
Okay, thank you.
Woman kicked off flight for rant about sitting between two big pigs. You know I'm going to say that again. Woman kicked off flight for rant about sitting between two big pigs. This story was done today, January the 29th, 2019, coming from the New York Post. And this is how it reads. A woman was kicked off a United Airlines flight after ranting about sitting between two big pigs. A tirade caught on video by one of the passengers. She was fat shaming. Oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to do this for the next 4 hours, the woman tells someone on her cell phone on the recent Las Vegas to Newark flight. This is just impossible because they're squishing me, like just unbelievable. At least they'll keep me warm, she continues. I can't sit here because they're both so big on left and right. I can't even sit here. Norma Rogers, a registered nurse from New Jersey, sitting next to the obnoxious woman, is then heard saying, "Bitch, please, okay?" But the woman continues her tirade saying, "I can't do this," adding, "Well, I eat salad." An aspirated Rogers turns to a flight attendant for help. "Excuse me, can you find her another seat because I will be verbally abused by this bitch or anybody else," she said. "I will not be verbally abused by anybody. I'm not tolerating it. I am not starting my new year off with this kind of negativity." The crew member asked the woman if she would like to wait in the rear so she could check to see if there was another seat available. Other passengers then confront the furious flyer. "You should be ashamed of yourself, madam. What you're doing is so terrible. You should be ashamed of yourself," one says. But she lashes back by saying, "I'm not politically correct. Why don't you try and sit between those two big pigs?" As the woman disappeared from view, Rogers added one parting shot, "Bitch, kiss my fat ass." In a Facebook post about the incident that has been viewed almost 2.5 million times, Rogers says airline workers eventually escorted the woman off the plane. "I would like to say thank you to the flight attendant, supervisor, and gate agent that handled the situation professionally and calmly," she wrote. "Thank you for addressing the issue immediately and not letting it escalate any further." All right. See, they tried to knock the damn video out, didn't they? Huh? They tried to do it. They were trying to do it. That a damn shame you sit up in here, you're always trying to come up with some nonsense, but do what you got to do. Right? The show will go on. Now, it was a situation on the airlines. White woman sitting between two brothers and sisters. Now, you know, again, for those who've been around, you remember back in the day, they used to have the weight machines, right? Put the penny in there, and then it said according to your height, what your weight is, right? You know, there's, you know, again, the standard that weight machine would be on, let's say 5'10", supposed to be 100 and, you know, say 175, 70, 60 pounds or whatever it might be. But again, you had to ask whose standard is that, right? That's a white standard, right? White people have a different frame and structure than black people, right? So again, when they make things accordingly, sometimes they make it in a way that would be more European, right? Because again, you know, everybody kind of has the running joke a bit about like how sometimes sisters can be, you know, overweight due to the simple fact that, you know, again, stress and so forth. And eating is a comfort for when you're going through stressful times, right? So in the case here, we have two, let's say, customers who pay for their seat just like you pay for your seat. But again, they themselves may be a little bit overweight, right? Well, let's put it that way, right? And so, due to the simple fact that they sitting together, you know, and there's 3 seats there, so this person here was assigned to the in between them, and is having some issues with this, right? Now, again, you and I just heard the video. Now, again, I want to think who wrote the article, because I didn't hear 2 big pigs. Did you hear 2 big pigs? Because I didn't hear that. So that's telling me that the person who writing this is embellishing, and actually, you know, they're always looking for the angle to take the shot. Because again, I didn't hear it. Did you hear it? Maybe put in the comment if you heard, because I didn't hear it, right? And so, you know, here was this woman again being on the phone again. You know, I remember back when the phones first came out, you know, phone was kind of like, you know, when people were not used to having phones, right? Used to catch people, not even nobody calling. They'd be just looking at their damn phone just to let you know they had a phone, right? And then after that kind of wore down, everybody got used to seeing people having a phone. Then it came to the fact that people started to, when they talking on the phone, they made sure everybody on the train, on the bus, walking down the street could hear their ass talking, right? Like, where the fuck is your damn phone etiquette? You got a phone etiquette and shit, nigga, ignorant as fuck. And now it don't have to be black folks. It was everybody, you know, again, trying to, you know, show out. So in this case, this is old, right? Everybody, cell phones is not nothing like new. You know, you got babies got the phones now, right? So here's a woman on the phone, right, having a conversation, and again, she throwing shots in the air, right? It's the only thing she could do, right? She gonna throw the shots in the air. I can't do this, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, sister is kind of over there chewing, you know what I'm saying? Got that chew pop, you know what I'm talking about, that chewing pop sound, right? Brother over there just sitting there, because I'm pretty sure this ain't nothing new to them, right? I'm pretty sure this is, they, you know, in, you know, public, you know, let's say transportation and things like that, and based on the way they have an excess of weight on them, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I can't even see them getting on no bus, right? You know, I don't see that so, you know, so I'm pretty sure they kind of used to that, and so girl already seen it coming, so she was already like, I'm gonna beat you to the punch, and you know, on the plane, it causes ruckus, right? You know, in fact, you get your ass he-hoed off the damn plane. So and that's eventually ended up when it happened. But again, you know, some certain things have been said. So the thing is, when you in a situation like that, how do you handle it, right? Should she had just said, fuck it, let me go ahead and say, stewardess, is it possible that you could find me another seat, you know, pull it to the side, or just go ahead and just be rambunctious with it, be like, fuck it, you know what I'm saying, these 2 fat pigs, and woo, woo, woo. But you know what I'm saying, let me tell you, 2 tons of fun would have bust that ass wide, you understand? So, you didn't want that. You best believe you don't want that, huh? You don't want that. You know what I'm saying? Because when you said that little shot, talking about, I eat salad, but you kind of peeked to the right to see if the brother was coming with the old, you thought he was going to give you one because you tried to sneak that in there. I eat salad. Like, what? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you rude. You know what I'm saying? And she gave you a shot, bitch. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, again, that went a little viral. People looking at kids. You know, certain people are making a lot of fun of that, right? There's, you know, again, we're seeing our people in certain lights. Again, it's just for the ridicule. Again, I'm pretty sure most of the time when it's viral like that, we know who making those videos go viral because they're making fun and passing it along, right? And so anyway, you know, that's how I guess it was, you know, the way as you being on the other side of it, she dealt with it in the best way. She threw a shot, but again, look, I'm gonna make your ride much harder. I'm gonna go ahead and put this, you know, this service on you and make them have to do their job and even get you to delay to wherever the hell you kind of go, right? So again, you know, tit for tat. But again, there's better ways. Again, you know, the hostility that's going on in this country. So there's a lot of shit. Again, people, when they have the opportunity, they're going to do it. And again, these people seem like it don't matter. I mean, in that situation there, I mean, you was in between both. I mean, I don't know if, you know, it was kind of like, you know what I'm saying, if you've seen if you know, watch the Animal Kingdom, man, you see them rhinoceros and, you know, buffaloes or hippos getting in it, boy. I done seen them whoop a lion's ass before, so, you know, I don't think you want none of that. You know what I'm saying? I don't think you was built for that. But, you know, you got it off, and luckily you got up out of there. And again, they withheld they withheld themselves. So again, I advise you don't be doing that, because again, you could have caught the wrong two. Moving on, let me see who all out in the house. Got a couple people in the house. All right, let's see what I got up in here. I got, see, like probably nobody, no fam in the house. Must be passerbys. Again, welcome to the Black Minds News. Matter of fact, since you're sitting in here, you know, I'm always kind of asking for, since you're here, you can help a brother out. You know what I'm saying? Like if I was sitting on the corner, I had a cup in my hand, right? This is what I would do to you, right? I'd be like, hey, how about this? Check this out. I'll be right back. All right, so we're back with my PSA. It's in your hand. Go ahead and give me a little something. Let me have a like, dislike, comment, subscribe, whatever it is you need to give me. So anyway, moving on. So, you know, MJ's name has been in the news lately. You know, we're talking about MJ, we're talking about Michael Jackson, right? And so, you know, the Sundance then had this so-called documentary that they're bringing out. Again, as I said, that Khalid Muhammad has said they want to dig a man up and keep shooting him, kill him, because it didn't die hard enough, right? So, you know, sometimes kind of like people, they say, like elephants, they don't forget. And so, again, if you took an L, and I guess the best way to fight somebody is when they can't fight you back, right? And so I seen this here put out here today, and I was like, well, you know what I'm saying? People always saying they're your friends, right? The song Friends, how many of us have them? Friends, ones we can depend on, right? So what ended up happening is you got these people that's calling your friends are no longer here. You don't validate to say what your real relationship is, but based on the simple fact of who you was, there's a lot to be garnered by being able to have that as part of, let's say, that's part of your now livelihood, right? You can make some money off of that because you can write books and all kind of stuff, right? So I seen this individual here, and then I'm gonna give you behind that because again, like I said, let me play that first for you, and then I'll get into that. So let me see if I got it. Let me set it all up right quick. All right, y'all. So now I had to go back and I had to do it this way. For those who might have seen the original show that I had did live, you know what they end up doing? They actually banned me for 90 days doing live stream. So again, as you keep thinking, when I'm telling you I'm the most hated show in the black corner of the internet, if you don't recognize by now, you should recognize now. So that means that for 90 days, Mr. Blows Your Mind cannot do a live stream. Ask yourself, what is it that Mr. Blows Your Mind is doing that they're going all out their way? We know what it is. I called it out. Huh? You know what it is. 275,000 And you can't, the only way you're going to be able to try to justify is trying to make it so that you're going to feel that after 90 days, no one's looking. So you're going to slowly try to cut all my subscribership out and try to kill my channel. But I'm still coming, homies. I'm documenting everything, baby. I want that payday. You feel me? I want that payday. So you keep on doing what you're doing. Because we're going to go at it, homies. Let's do this. Now I was going to do the Michael Jackson story due to the simple fact that they tried to say that it was copy claim, right? Which is nonsense. This is media. Do watch my show notice I only do media. Was no video of nothing. So if you're going to at least, if you were going to stop the streaming, why did you try to put me on the 90-day ban? Because why? You can't see yourself, but you're going to see yourself anyway. Don't matter whether it's by me, regardless, the inevitable. I keep telling you that. So let's get on to the show. Now, I had to come back and give you back to what I had on that, right? So, again, I had to get us back to where we was, right? I had to get us back to where we was because, again, that's what they got to do, y'all. I believe there's many besides them who don't want this show because, again, this show here that I do here, I'm a one-man band. And guess what? You know, it's kind of like Tupac. A lot of people was not thugs when Tupac was alive. When Tupac was dead, everybody want to be a thug now, right? So what did you say, Mr. Blow? What I'm saying is, if you get Mr. Blow's your mind out the way, then everybody else can try to steal his style. It's hard trying to go against an original. And again, you know the problem is, when you look at the original over there, you don't see the numbers that don't match. You don't see the subscribership that don't match. But he got the best put well show there is in the black corner of the internet. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's not other channels out here who in cahoots behind doors, who are all probably agents as well, are trying to get me suppressed. And if it's not them, then it must be the so-called ones that work for the corporations, who are the racists inside of YouTube and Google. And that's the part that nobody sees the hand. But you know over here is the whiteologist. I sees all your plays, right? So again, we're gonna keep moving on. I ain't gonna pay no attention to you. I told you that we gonna have that day. We're gonna have it. Don't worry. So let's look at this here. Let's see. So this story here, I'm gonna pull out again just to go on the theme, because see, again, you know these people, man, they funny style, right? Very, 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 very funny style, right? They make it appear as if like, well, you know, it's a figment of your imagination. No one is doing that to you, you know. I mean, that's not what we do, you know. I'm not sure why you would say something like that. I mean, you know, racism is a figment of your imagination. No, you're just an angry black guy. No. The one thing you should recognize and must understand.
Now to that scandal that brought down.
Huh? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we're gonna get it. We're gonna fire it up, baby, because we're doing it from this end to now, huh? So, you know, so I came across this story here, right? And I remember back in the days when they used to talk about these, first really just the individual, and then again his wife is gonna be a part of that, right? And they is again what they call the American evangelistic, or the American evangelist. When he say America, he's the one that represents, right? You got your, you know, your people there. And then the story kind of came out again, and I was kind of like, well, you know how it goes, right? You know, it's like, okay, maybe there's some other stuff to this, right? Matter of fact, let me get both of them, because there's two parts to that story. Here, hold on, let me get that right now. Let me get that right. Okay. All right, so I think I got it now. I got it right. So let me play this, and we shall be right back. Let's see. Oh yeah, let's get it.
That scandal that brought down a Christian TV empire 30 years later, 2020 has a special look at the televangelist Jim and Tammy Faye Bakker. Amy here with that story. And Amy, you also took a look at what Jim Bakker's doing now.
That's right. Well, he could have been in prison right now. He was sentenced to 45. He only served 5, and so he is out, and now he is back in front of the cameras.
I'm talking about end times. Oh, I've got powdered food.
It's the talk show that describes itself as a daily broadcast featuring prophetic and biblical revelations brought to light in today's world. But take a close look at the host. He may look very familiar.
Welcome to the Jim Bakker Show.
It's Jim Bakker with closely cropped hair and a white beard, looking markedly different than his days as a household name back in the 70s and 80s. Bakker, along with then-wife Tammy Faye, quickly rose to stardom with the Praise the Lord network.
I'm asking you to start giving and just see what happens in your life.
But the couple suffered a very public downfall in the late 80s. Jim caught in a sex scandal.
All I could tell you is it certainly was not an affair. Okay?
Her version is pretty horrific. And in today's Me Too movement, it probably could have resulted in criminal charges. Now, if you believe Jim Bakker's version of it, it was a consensual liaison.
The Bakkers lost control of their PTL empire. Allegations of fraudulent fundraising led to a federal indictment for Jim.
Jim Bakker was found guilty on all 24 counts of wire and mail fraud and conspiracy.
Tammy filed for divorce before passing away in 2007. Bakker appealed his sentence and was released from prison after serving just 5 years. Now, Jim Bakker's back on TV.
If the power goes out, we believe in being ready for anything.
I guess you'd say, Jim and Lori, help me be prepared today.
Once again, spreading his faith alongside wife Lori.
He's back on TV talking about salvation and Jesus and selling a lot of stuff.
Now, actress Kristen Chenoweth, who says she grew up watching the Bakkers, as all of us did on TV, is now developing a musical based on Tammy Faye. That's something I'd go see.
Yeah, this is a big scandal. I remember this to this to the T.
Remember the mascara?
Oh yeah. And everyone else can see a lot more on 2020 Tonight. The special is called Unfaithfully Yours. That's at 9 Eastern. Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
This shows the location where we are right now. We're actually sitting right here.
The income from the satellite network allowed Bakker to launch his third big innovation, which was creating a Christian Disneyland on the border of North and South Carolina, what became Heritage USA.
Reverend Bakker unveiled the drawings and blueprints for his newest project, Heritage Grand Hotel and Grand Street.
Bakker had always been fascinated by Walt Disney. He sat back and said, why can't we have a Christian version of Disneyland?
Bakker says he doesn't mind the label Christian Disney World as a description of his plans to create a place where PTL members can vacation with inspiration.
Initially, PTL bought 1,200 acres. They later added additional acreage for a total of about 2,300 acres.
Had a big hotel, little shops, a big water park.
Elementary and high schools, condominiums, a hotel, shopping areas, and more.
We were trying to build the best theme park for families in this country. We had more than Mickey Mouse. We had salvation. Top that.
You gonna be all right back there? I just don't want you to fall off or anything.
Should be okay.
All right, so we're gonna take a tour of our Morningstar campus, which we purchased at former PTL property. And we have about 45 or 50 acres of what was once over 2,000 acres. And the building you see here is what was known as the Grand Hotel. These are some of the original PTL buildings. They would have been used for partners that would have come from around the world. You know, they could have stayed a night, a week. There was so much to do, and so we preserved as many as we can. The vast majority of all the structures of PTL are gone. The larger ones are still in place. We've been able to save them. The 21-story tower was being built during the heyday of PTL. And then construction came to a halt amid, accusation and all of the things that happened with Jim and Tammy at the time. Literally inside there were people's lunch boxes and saws. I mean, it just stopped. To my left over here, this was actually the entrance to the water park, and where those townhomes are now was actually the water park of PTL. This was the entranceway where you bought your tickets, so to speak, and got into the theme park. And a tram would stop and pick you up, and then you would take the tram all over these 2,000-acre parcel. This was really a focal point of PTL. Jim told me personally that he really wanted someone to pray with him about something at PTL. And he had this huge campus and he went everywhere and he couldn't find anything that was open. It was late at night. So he put it up. It's got courtyards inside. It's got a little prayer chapel. It even had kind of prayer grottos where you could come in and spend a day just in solitude praying. Out of all the people that come to PTL, they remember the upper room.
All right, so what we got there, old Jim Bakker back in business, right? Again, American televangelist, right? Remember, he was a former Assemblies of God minister, right? Ended up being convicted felon. Former host of the PTL Club, which the PTL stands for, Praise the Lord. Huh? So we see that this Heritage USA is in Fort Mill, South Carolina. It was a former Christian theme park, which opened back in 1978 and it closed back in 89, right? And then what you see there, they are reopening it once again, right? Talking about that, again, the Heritage USA, and that it's going to be the Christian version of Disneyland. Think about that, Christian version of Disneyland, right? So originally they had tried to get about 1,200 acres, ended up getting about 2,300 acres, right? That's pretty big. That's a lot of acreage, right? So according to that, on this compound, right, or I guess you say this compound, right, they're gonna have hotels and shopping, right? So I'm just thinking ching ching all the way around, and I'm pretty sure you're gonna have plenty of services, right? So the pocket's gonna get fat in there, right? So here it is that the theme is a theme park for family, right? You got hotels and shopping, right? Okay, and and then you heard in the video where that one individual was talking about, he's like, they were going to have more than just Mickey Mouse, right? He said they going to have salvation. Now, top that. Now, really? Really? Now, again, y'all motto is PTL, praise the Lord, right? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, what about that John 2:16 that talks about, to those who sow doves, he said, get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market or merchandise. Huh? Also, I think it talked about in Matthew's, I guess it's 12 and 13, but it's more 13 where it says, my Father's house shall be a house of prayer. You make it a house of robbers. Huh? So it's kind of like, that whole thing when prosperity teaching came, that, like Joel Osteen and them, it's not really about, the same aspects of what most people who go to these, again, I have to say, what is a Christian? You know what I'm saying? We hear that term. You have a mind of what you think it is, but again, we see so many different versions, like what people do, and then according to, you know, it's like, you know, DOS got a different version of those who follow up under that prescription, are a lot more forgiving, and, you know, all that stuff. But these other people, they got a whole different functionality of their Christianity. And some of it can condone some of the most heinous things that we ever seen historically. So I'm just saying that it's funny how people, again, you can read the scriptures in one aspect, and then you read the scriptures in one aspect, but you get a whole different interpretation versus another person who has a whole different interpretation, and it don't mean the same thing. So that's why I say I'm not sure what a Christian is. Maybe you do, right? But that's what it is. And so again, that whole history of that in this individual here, because I'm trying to figure out, well, if a black man had did the things and come with that kind of money, no charges was ever given, right? And to come back and we're going to get it cracking, popping once again. No black man could ever done that or do that, right? He might have a mega church, but he not going to get no compound. Talking about something, we're going to build something like Disneyland, right? So I was thinking, well, man, maybe it's, again, like I said about me being the Tupac, and motherfucker wants you dead so they can copy your style, right? So maybe the same thing. Got Mike out the way so that they can now make them a Neverland, right? Want to make them the Never Ever Land, right? Matter of fact, it was me trying to do the Michael Jackson story that got me, again, couldn't do the streaming for 90 days, right? No warning, nothing, no strikes. I got all that documented. Again, I said the most documented show is because I'm the most hated show. You damn right I'm going to have that documentation. So, you know, so whatever it is, man, you know, whatever it is, whatever floats their motherfucking boat, because again, I know who she is, and you know I know who she is, right? So anyway, let's keep it going. You know, we ain't going to suppose too much on that. So I seen this here, and again, as we talking about building, right? I seen this here, and it's like, well, I guess everybody is doing it, right? You have to ask yourself, why are they doing it, right? Well, sit back for a quick second. Let me see if we get it open. Let's see if we can get it going. All right, check this out. I'll be right back.
It's one of the most porous and dangerous border areas in the world. The frontier between Afghanistan and Pakistan, often the scene of cross-border attacks. The American and Afghan governments consider the border to be the focal point of the Haqqani network. Its fighters are affiliated to the Taliban. They are accused of orchestrating some of the deadliest attacks against US soldiers over the last 17 years of war in Afghanistan. Facing mounting international pressure and US financial sanctions, the Pakistanis are sealing the border, building a steel fence designed to stop the flow of weapons and fighters.
We have done a great deal to bring the normalcy back to North Waziristan. The mere fact that today I brought the media here to interact with the local people for themselves, and they will come to know that what change has come to North Waziristan. This is the place where even the security forces couldn't have moved so freely.
But the fence is further straining ties between the neighbors. It's being built along the Durand Line, the border demarcation drawn by the British in 1893, which Afghanistan does not recognize. Leaders in Kabul say parts of the fence are being built on Afghan soil.
This belt, I think this is designed to sort of create a separation between the people of the same ethnicities who yet again lives on this both sides of this border.
But the Pakistani government says it's determined to complete the fence as well as rebuild destroyed villages to encourage people displaced by the conflict to return home.
Slowly, gradually, everything is coming back to normal. Earlier, schools, hospitals, and infrastructure were destroyed, but now it's been reconstructed after the military operation and the restoration of peace. Shops and markets are open. Very soon, we'll be having a new Waziristan.
About 900 of almost 2,600 kilometers on the border has already been fenced. Army commanders say the rest will be completed by next year. Hashim Ahbara, Al Jazeera.
All right. So we're going international. You know, once in a while I'm going to hit the international when the news is out there. So we see that in Pakistan, they decide they're going to put up a wall. Now, why is the Pakistanis doing something that we're doing? Well, I can't say we per se, but again, the country is thinking about trying to put up a wall in Mexico, right? And we saw that you've been paying a little attention about what's going on in Afghanistan, right? You know, the country has been bombing them again, bombing, right? This is blowing it up everywhere, right? No boots on the ground doing the damage. They're bombing up shit, right? And so pretty much the bomb has been wiping out a lot of the Afghanistanian aspect of it, right? So they got a place there called Brokaw, right? Brokaw. And allegedly, it is in that area where they said that there's a lot of the territory, right, that they're going to put this fence, right? Now, again, did you see how much land that was? That was about, they say it's about almost 1,500 miles. I mean, damn. Huh? I mean, you might as well build the Great Wall of China, right? If you're going to have something like that. Right? And so what you're doing is you got this place that they call, again, as I said, was called Brokaw, right? Now, it's this here is the faces, the stations to where they facing off in in Pakistan, right? This is kind of like the border, but again, it was kind of said that the Afghanistan actually have territorial rights or claims, they say. They won't say right, they'll say claims in the area which would be considered Pakistan, right? And so that based on, they really waving a white flag and getting their ass up out of Afghanistan. Let's keep it 100, right? If you did the reading, you probably know that. So they're getting up out of Afghanistan because, again, everybody know they're about to head on over to Venezuela, right? That's where everybody moving to, right? And so, they said that in this place, this Brokaw, that in that area, they said that there's a lot of, gun trafficking, drug trafficking and stuff. And again, if they're going to pack up, again, they want to put the fence because some of them saying that the Pakistanis want to show that they about that and trying to, prove to the United States that they really serious about trying to keep them out. But, if once they pull out, it's going to cause some problems. Right? And so, when you see that and see that they're trying to build that wall, because again, history, there's been some things over there transpiring, but again, I guess it's the end of that and they're moving out. So I don't know how long that fence is going to be able to hold, because as long as the United States is there, it might can't hold because they have troops in there, but it's just a matter of time they all will be, re-employed somewhere else, and most likely Venezuela, due to the simple fact of what's going over there, right? So just a little international news, again, because I said about walls, right? Well, they make it seem as if somebody else is doing the same thing. But again, same people are influenced over there as same ones doing here, right? So that's a little information for those who might be interested in that. So I'm going to move on, right? So again, as I was talking about Venezuela, right? They got some stuff going on over there. And this here, I was kind of looking at like, okay, like, when you get in hard times, right? You get in hard times, so what you do is you try to find things that you can maintain. So they got the women out here doing some things, and I'm looking at this like, sisters, those who all into having that type of, hairstyle and where you getting your hair from, think about this. People who are distressed and under a lot of anxiety. Well, check this out and then I'll come back. How about that? Now check this out.
Compramos cabello. Mami, compramos cabello. Venga, yo le doy el valor del cabello que podemos hacer. Mami, que puede vender su cabello para eso comprar. Cabello. Ya tuvieron que llegar al grado más extremo, que es cortarse en su cabello para poder conseguir dinero. Es insoportable. Con ese dinero van a contribuir a mejorar la calidad de vida. Compramos cabello, bien caro, compramos cabello, mami, compramos cabello. A los 10 centímetros ya al menos se puede coger, a los 15, a los 20, a los 30 centímetros ya se le puede comprar. Pues dejarte comprarlo mañana te pueden dar 250.000 pesos, pero depende del largo del cabello. ¿Me dejas ver el largo de tu cabello? Pero cuando te van a tocar nomás de la parte de atrás, de acá, de esta parte de acá. Realmente a la mujer venezolana le duele tanto perder su cabello como otra parte de su cuerpo. Cada mujer que pasa por acá sueña que va a regresar a su país. Cada hombre que llega sueña con volver a su familia. Compramos cabello, mami, compramos cabello. Bien caro, compramos cabello.
All right. So we see in Venezuela, due to all this things that are happening over there. Again, if you're a little astute and keeping up with the news, you know that there's an issue going over there because you got Maduro. Again, I will bring the name up because you actually got something they're going to play on there. And then you have Guaido, right? Again, you have those who established as the president of Venezuela, and then you have the one that they want, the incumbent that would be the one that the other establishment, let's say the Europeans, want in, right? Due to some of how the sick go and all this other stuff. And we'll get to that as we get to that. But again, what we have is against the people, again, when, you know, it's the eventuality of war possibly happening there. And, you know, it's, people migrating, trying to get up out of the spot. So, you know, you don't have money. So, again, you know, as a woman, there's certain things, again, that, you know, women can do to, you know, make a living, even though that wouldn't be considered a moral aspect. But in this case here, it's like they can cut hair, right? Dude's out there, he hustling a pimp for hair. Coming to me, just give me, you know, 10 centimeters or 6, you know what I'm saying? A little bit money, about 8, you know what I'm saying? You want to make you want to make some money, you know what I'm saying? And again, there's a market for that, right? And who would be the biggest seller, not seller, but who would be the biggest buyers of it? Sisters? So here you are as a consumer buying stressed hair and putting it in your head and wondering why maybe sometimes you're so having these, you know, attacks with your brother, your man, right? You're putting in foreign synthetic in top of yours and it's seeping some of that energy into your own. We understand that the system has you kind of, and again, for those who are going natural, more power to you, sisters. Now, the other ones, now, again, you got to look at this. All around this bubble, all these other women with this type of hair are able to make money doing that. One of these days, it may change the channel, and again, your hair going to be in style, but if you are here killing it, you know what I'm saying, kind of like you got some grass, right, and you start putting in some weed fertilizer or weed killer in your grass, and that's what you're doing to your own hair. That's why sometimes you've seen videos where women, when the wig fall off and their head look like Jason Friday the 13th when his head die. You remember when when Jason mask his shit fell off and his head looked like the Gap band was playing in his shit, right? So, and I know, sister, that's not no shot at you or anything, because I love you. You understand? A brother here loves my sisters. And I know that is part of what it is. And so, you know, that's one form of fashion where you can put some people out of business. It has something to do with that. And I know you working for the 9 to 5 for Mr. Charlie. You got to do what you got to do. But again, it's slowly, and we can put some of them out of business because, again, it's a business. Even for the most poorest person can use their hair as a way to get out. They don't even have to go to the sale. They box. They still got another option. Sisters here, we get in that, I'm not say we, but when our sisters here get in the situation, right? hair won't be an option, right? Hair won't be an option. So just wanted to show you how they're getting down to Venezuela, and just going to see that, look where some of these products of these hairs are coming from. Distress, women, anxiety, women who are desperate and so forth. And then again, what they say, you are what you eat, but you are what you wear on your head too, right? So, yeah, a little FYI for you. So what else I got up in the bag for you? Matter of fact, now I got to do a PSA because again, I'm the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. They got me on a 90 days no streaming. Can you believe that? Never had a strike. Never had a strike. You took me from not having no strike to just straight 90 days because you're trying to suppress me. Because again, the reason why you're doing it with 90 days, you're going to suppress when I do the drop, when I do the uploads, the numbers won't match either because you're going to suppress it, and they're going to slowly keep taking the numbers away to try to kill the channel. This is what they're about. They want to get rid of the one video that I prophesied. They don't want that to be there. They don't want that there. And that's what this is all about. So anyway, moving on. So as we were talking about Venezuela, again, let me give you a little show of the history of that. But first of all, let's do this PSA, and then from there, right after that, get back into it. Let's do it. See how it's gonna work, huh? Maybe, maybe not.
The Bank of England is telling President Maduro that he cannot have access to his country's gold reserves, worth more than $1 billion, by the way, because they say that he's not the country's president anymore, as proclaimed by the Trump administration. Follow? Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury today, in the form of Secretary of State Mnuchin, also announced sanctions against Citgo, a move that also seems to be intended toward giving control of the Venezuelan company to Juan Guaido, who is, according to the United States, the new proclaimed president of Venezuela. This all gets both intriguing and somewhat confusing. So we have our RT correspondent, Sara Montes de Oca, joining us now with the very latest on what's going on with this story. It does seem very, very curious that the United States continued to apply even more pressure today. I don't think this is going to be stopping anytime soon.
Well, Rick, I don't think so either, but I do want to start with us having seen something similar before. Back in 2011 with former Libyan leader Gaddafi. Now, the U.S. also froze Libyan government assets during that time, and they did so with the help of the UN. They placed sanctions on Libya.
Interesting.
To this day, prosecutors still don't know where those millions of dollars went. Rick, we could see this happening again in Venezuela. Prosecutors are still looking as to where that money went. Hopefully this is not the case, but the UK is blocking Venezuela from accessing.
Yeah, well, we know what's really interesting about this is they seem to be saying, the United States seems to be saying, very simple. I mean, it's really a lot easier to figure out if you just put it in these terms. We don't like Maduro. We like this guy Guaido. So we're going to give Guaido everything, including control of Citgo and control of this $1.2 billion in gold that apparently the Venezuelans have in the Bank of England. The question is, and here's that comparison that you just made between Muammar Gaddafi, is How do we know that Guaido will then not be beholden to the United States? Therefore, whatever agents working with the United States, and of course U.S. companies, won't end up with the larger share of all of that.
Well, we don't. And National Secretary Advisor John Bolton had this to say just a few hours ago.
All right.
I call on all responsible nations to recognize interim President Guaido immediately. Maduro has made clear he will not recognize Guaido or call for new elections. Now is the time to stand for democracy and prosperity in Venezuela.
Again, calling for other nations to recognize Guaido as president. And there's another sound that I want to play from U.S. Secretary of Treasury Steve Mnuchin.
So when there is a recognition that PDVSA is the property of the rightful rulers, the rightful leaders, president, then indeed that money will be available to Guaido. We will be working with them on the money in the blocked account and whether that can be used for them.
I mean, you heard him, Mnuchin, saying that blocked account will be accessible to Guaido.
To Guaido.
But
it seems peculiar, doesn't it? I mean,
it does.
The idea that the United States or any government, right, this happens to be our beloved country, but the idea that any foreign power can go to the backyard and say to any other country, this money, which belongs to you, you can't have. We're going to give it to the chosen person in your country.
Critics are calling this bank theft, or theft in general. If somebody goes into a bank and asks to retrieve their money, and the bank says no, even though you have those funds, that's essentially what critics are comparing it to. Now, I do want to say that Guaido wrote a letter to UK Prime Minister Theresa May and the Governor of the Bank of England saying, I am writing to ask you to stop this illegitimate transaction. If the money is transferred, it will be used by the illegitimate and kleptocratic regime of Nicolás Maduro to repress and brutalize the Venezuelan people. Rich, we're looking at 16.5 tons. That was last year, 16.5 tons of gold. That comes out to about 550 million. Now it's doubled after a deal that Venezuela made with the Deutsche Bank.
Right.
Almost $1.2 billion that Venezuela has been.
And by the way, we should underscore for our viewers, this is not to say that anybody's taking sides. Maduro has not been a good guy. His policies have been absolutely atrocious for Venezuela.
I do just
it has
want to
not
add,
been successful. We're out of time, but it has not been successful.
Well, now the oil sanctions are
in
place. So.
Good stuff. Appreciate it.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.
All right, so we see that in Venezuela there's a situation happening there. They call it a siege, right? Matter of fact, I was reading that one time, talking about a coup was happening, right? So what you see is you have where the people had an election, right? And then they had Maduro, who supposedly had won, but again, I think the United States, or it was written in the articles that might have been some, something not kosher with the election, right? But accordingly that he won, and so again, they wanted Guaido to actually be the interim, again, because he is the European pick, right? And I think it got a lot to do with the fact, because I also read that Russia was also telling the United States not to get it. So I'm looking at this as, man, this is formulating into something that can be, if they don't get this resolved, right? And it looks like, you have Turkey, and I see Mexico on the side of what would be Maduro, right? So I'm thinking, well, if Mexico is siding with that, and Mexico being on the back end, I guess that's how you're going to get your wall up, right? Because you're going to have to be able to prevent them and those that, because they're going to have an issue with this, right? Because I guess they're allies with them. And then you have the Guaido, United States, and then there's other South American nations that will ally with them. So it's kind of like, everybody is taking a side, and there's only one side. And then you got the Europeans on that same side. You got France and Britain, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, what this could turn into something to stay tuned to. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, Again, you know, this is the Black Minds News. And again, sometimes I take you in places that you probably wouldn't even look at. But again, you heard what Bolton just said, right? They saying that, you know, Guaido is the man. He's the one to be recognized in all the nations that they're talking about, that you would recognize him, not this other cat. So, you know, the other one, Maduro, is saying, no, there's a constitution and there's a court for that to be. And they're like, no, that ain't even, no. We told you that we supposed to have an election and we gave you specified time. You didn't do it. So, you know what I'm saying? This could get very ugly. So again, bringing you again for the black corner of the internet. Again, that's not some of the stuff that nobody does, but I will. So again, there's a little FYI for you, for that may be something we'll be looking is developing in the very near future. All right, so now let's get to some of this stuff here, right? So again, you know, people have their ways of interpreting what they think that's all about. Again, you do your research and study, you'll be able to figure it all out. So we had old Tom Brokaw. Tom said some things that, well, we're going to just have to look at it, right? Because, you know, it's just in this nation, it seems to be no matter where you turn, people who you thought, you know what I'm saying, they True Colors, right? Matter of fact, there used to be a game back in the day, True Colors. Play that game, boy. I remember one time playing that game and some stuff came out, like, you know, it was kind of, it'll make people, you know what I'm saying, it was like, you know, how you have game night. No, you have game night, right? So we get together, got couples, like me, my lady, and my boy, his lady, you know, my other boy, his lady. So, you know, we got 3 couples in there, we playing the game, you know what I'm saying, we done drank a little bit, you know, ate and stuff, you know, just have some fun, kids doing what they doing, right? And so we playing True Colors. Question comes up, says, if there's a bump late in the night, who would go? Now, we talking about everybody at the table, right? So, accordingly, you know, you would assume that your lady is going to pick you, right? Right? Because, you know, I guess if you're a man in your household, you would assume that you were the cat. But again, so, you know, you had to pick a color. Now, each person represented had a color. And so, after all the tallying up, you go back to the question, and then when that question come up, you pull the cards to see who get the most talent, to see who everybody picked. So on that particular one, Mr. Blows Your Mind gets it, right? Like, if it's just a bump in the night, it's Mr. Blows Your Mind that's going to get his ass down there like, look down here, right? And so the question became, like, I was expecting my lady to say that. I wasn't expecting my boy and lady to say that, and I wasn't expecting, because they picked themselves, right? You know, they picked themselves, and they ladies picked me. And so, you know, you get this whole thing about, hey, you know what I'm saying, why are you picking? Ooh, and then, you know, some personal stuff start coming out, and it's like, whoa. So that game, if you ever could find that game, it's called True Colors. I would suggest, I said, if you just want to play, but it's true to what it says. The shit gonna fall out, because it's a lot. It's like one question, like, say the food is cold, the wine is gone. Who here just won't go home, right? Meaning, who the type of motherfucker when everything is that shit, he still won't take their ass home. And it was funny as hell, but but that's still what it is, right? So True Colors. So that's just how these people is. They True Colors will come out no matter what profession they is, what kind of stature they supposed to be in, all that. They True Color gonna always be sure. It's like, your true colors shining through. I forgot what that was from, right? But there was some shit that said that. But anyway, that's the True Color, right? So let's see what happened with Tom Brokaw. What was his True Colors? Check it out.
Now to the backlash that is growing for Tom Brokaw, the NBC News veteran criticized for comments he made about Hispanics and the way he's apologizing. Lindsay Davis is here with that story for us. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Robin. Criticism was harsh and swift after the former nightly news anchor implied that Latinos need to do a better job of assimilating. Critics pounced, calling his comments not only racially insensitive, but also inaccurate. Then he was taken to task for what was deemed an unapologetic apology.
And a lot of this we don't want to talk about.
Brokaw backlash. During a panel conversation about the border wall on Meet the Press this weekend, veteran journalist Tom Brokaw offered his 2 cents about why conservatives are reluctant to embrace immigration.
But the fact is, on the Republican side, a lot of people see the rise of an extraordinary important new constituency in American politics, Hispanics, who will come here and all be Democrats. Also, I hear when I push people a little harder, I don't know whether I want brown grandbabies. I mean, that's also a part of it.
The 78-year-old former NBC News anchor then adding,
I also happen to believe that the Hispanics should work harder at assimilation. That's one of the things I've been saying for a long time. You know, that they ought not to be just codified in their communities, but make sure that all of their kids are learning to speak English and that they feel comfortable in the communities. And that's going to take outreach on both sides, frankly.
One panelist immediately pushed back.
And the idea that we think of American can only speak English as if Spanish and other languages wasn't always part of America is some ways troubling.
And online, many blasted Brokaw, calling his remarks on assimilation ignorant and xenophobic. Brokaw then responded in a string of tweets. I feel terrible. A part of my comments on Hispanics offended some members of that proud culture. And after that was met with more criticism, he went on to say, I am sorry, truly sorry, my comments were offensive to many. Later, in a flurry of bizarre tweets, he added, my tweet portal is whack. I've been trying to say I am sorry I offended, and I so appreciate my colleague. The National Association of Hispanic Journalists says that it reached out to NBC with concerns about Brokaw's commentary, and Congressman Joaquin Castro, twin brother of presidential candidate Julian Castro, tweeted, unfortunate to see xenophobia pass for elevated political commentary, adding that Brokaw seems stunningly ignorant of the Hispanic community in this country. We did reach out to NBC for comment. We've not heard anything back.
You guys know I'm already hot and bothered about this one. First of all, there is absolutely nothing wrong with speaking Spanish. Speaking another language, that is an asset in this country. It's an antiquated view of our country to think otherwise. He's factually wrong. 90% of young Latinos, nearly 90% born in this country, speak Spanish. Anecdotally, Gio's right here, my husband's right here. We all grew up speaking Spanish at home, but you go to school in this country and you speak English, and to think otherwise is just so wrong. And I've got to say, I'm just so disappointed in that a veteran like Tom Brokaw, a respected journalist in this country, would go there on TV, and I'm really thankful that Yamiche spoke up and said something.
Yes. But we still haven't gotten an official comment from NBC.
We have not heard from NBC. This is just wrong, and it's a really antiquated way of looking at our country. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me say that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
All right. So we see Tom Brokaw. Well, those been around used to watch news like that. Tom Brokaw coming on NBC News, right? And newscasters again let sit in his seat, right? The journalists sit in his seat. That sit there is the, pretty much the anchor. You get to be, accustomed to an individual like that, and come to get this kind of like, rapport, as if like, this guy is trustworthy, and you kind of know him. At least that's the way they portray that, right? And so here was this individual again. You got to see his true colors. Now he been out the game a bit, retired and so forth, right? And at least I think he retired, right? I could be wrong on that. I think it was. If he not, he is now, right? So anyway, he decided again, due to again, he's saying something as if like. He said the Republicans, right? He said, well, the Republicans, they're having a problem with this rise of this Hispanicness. And again, the simple fact is that, they going to actually come here and be Democrats, which means they can't win because they say they're not coming here. So he said they need to get on board, right, and assimilate. Assimilate. Now, when you take the etymology, assimilate, it means to be like one's neighbor, right? Right? But accordingly, this is a diverse nation, and again, you will find out later on that diversity is not a friend to white folks, right? They don't think diversity is in benefits to them, right? And so that's what you're seeing in his conversation here, right? Because he's saying that, okay, well, You know, I see that they're growing in numbers, and again, this could be detriment to us, and again, having our control in this nation, at least as the Republicans. And said, but again, I want you to be more like one's neighbor. But there's you also other words that I could think about when I think about assimilate would be something like, well, to be incorporated, right? Maybe to take in, maybe to absorb, right? Appropriate, maybe adapt. What another word I could think about? Maybe like adjust, maybe transform yourself, maybe convert. Yeah, that's a good one. What about resolve into, right? What about, that's another, amalgamate. Yeah, they can amalgamate, right? What about amalgamate? What about commingle? You know, I use that word, commingle, right? You know, commingle. What about intermix? What about homogenize? Well, I thought, what? Homogenize. What about homogenize? What about blend in? Right? I think about that. Those are the words I could think about, right? So, you know, I mean, you know, the fear that's going on. Again, he said he didn't want no brown babies, right? Now, is that all bad? Is it about self-preservation and prosperity? Is that racist? I don't say that it's racist, right? Because again, first thing in preservation is self-preservation, right? That they say self-preservation is number one, right? And again, by me being one of the prophetic ones that brought that to the black corner of the internet, right? So that must be coming to fruition, right? It must be slowly to the fact that a man at his age and status now is still talking about, well, we need you to assimilate because we actually need you to be more like us because you're going to be the replacement, right? You're actually the replacement. And he said, you know, hearts of all hearts, I really don't want no damn brown grandbabies, right? I would prefer to have them to be white. But I know we're not going to be able to populate quick enough to make that a fruition. So we have to take and go the loose. We have to go the Ricky Ricardo route. Lucy with Ricky Ricardo. That's what that is here, right? And so a lot of them are not really liking that, even though they are, you know, becoming census white, right? Because again, there is some Spanish, which takes them to Europe, and they use that Europe to get them in the classification of white, but they not really liking that. And then they say, well, you need to be more like us. You need to do it quicker. You need to get it right. Now, this is old Tom Brokaw. So how many other mugs is out here just like him? Just like the whole thing we talk about when it came down to, which we'll get back to later in the rest of the show. So that was Tom Brokaw saying some shit that, you know, put his foot in his mouth. Again, did he really put his foot in his mouth, or did he just keep it 100 where he really coming from? And again, people, you know, we get why people are saying what they're saying, but again, they understand the time. They see the clock. Matter of fact, they were saying the other day, I was looking, they said that the damn doomsday clock is stuck at 2 minutes till doomsday. Stuck. And I'm like, well, y'all the motherfuckers moving it, but what you mean it's stuck? Well, maybe it had something to do with what I was the story before this one about Venezuela, right? But anyway, moving on. So since I'm already on the theme about that kind of stuff, well, here's somebody, right? You know, again, like I say, you could be, you know, a certain status, and you think that certain people wouldn't be a certain way, but that's not true. They, you know, they gonna show you who they truly is, because again, you know, things are changing, right? They said nothing been the same ever since they ain't been having no babies. All right, but anyway, so check this out. Be right back.
Iowa Congressman Steve King is back on his home turf this weekend and fighting back against claims that he has defended white supremacy. The backlash erupting after an interview the congressman gave to the New York Times, questioning why terms like white nationalists and white supremacists were offensive. The comments led King's own party leaders to strip him of his committee assignments. At a town hall, the Iowa Republican continued to claim that he's not a racist. Here now is CNN's Sarah Seidner.
First of all, you know, the big subject that's before us all, that some might refer to as the elephant in the room, is a situation of a New York Times quote.
A quote that his own party thought was so racist, they stripped Congressman Steve King of his congressional committee assignments. In it, he says, white nationalist, white supremacist, Western civilization, how did that language become offensive? Why did I sit in classes teaching me about the merits of our history and our civilization?
He chose those words and punctuated them the way he did. But what I was addressing was not those terms of white supremacy or white nationalism, but when I said, why did that language become offensive, I was speaking exclusively and directly about Western civilization. They are denigrating Western civilization today.
King spoke to his constituents in Primgar, Iowa, his first town hall since the controversy. Primgar's claim to fame, the only place in the world named Primgar. It is a town with a mayor, but no stoplight, an elementary school, but no high school, a place small enough where most residents know each other by name.
I didn't even know he was coming until earlier this week. They announced it.
King gave his Twitter followers a 5-minute warning. I will be starting a potentially volatile town hall in Primgar, Iowa, he posted. He then walked into what turned out to be a very warm reception.
Thank you. Wow.
We love your conservatism, and we pray that they never silence you.
One adoring constituent praised him and said she is bothered by what she called reverse racism. King agreed and then pivots.
And one of the things that I was bothered by when you had this problem was the reverse racism toward a white European man that founded this country. And that's the values that we're built on. And we have to be embarrassed to say anymore that we're white European background. And I think that is wrong. And I think we need to push back. And I think we need to take the sting out of the words racism.
We can do the things that you've described, and we can at the same time embrace everything that Dr. Martin Luther King taught us, all at the same time. And if we had stuck with his vision, we wouldn't be in the place we're in today in this society, in this country.
There were a few frustrations expressed, one constituent asking for help invigorating her small town's economy.
What are you tangibly going to do, like in Congress, fight for us, advocate for us? Any tangible actions?
Well, would you give me a tangible recommendation?
I don't know. I'm just so frustrated.
Another gentleman asking how the congressman plans to help with the lack of visas for migrant workers to help work the farms.
What are you doing to help the temporary ag worker program?
Until we can secure our border, we aren't going to be able to have a constructive dialogue on the balance of this. But I will support a bonded program, and a bonded program that is hopefully tailored to meet some of these labor needs that we have.
Not a single person asked about his prior racist comments, but when we asked what his constituents thought about his comments, we got an earful. Are you concerned that you have a congressman who is racist?
I do have a congressman who's racist. I was concerned about it during the whole last election cycle. That's why I worked hard for his opponent, J.D. Skolton, because I know my congressman's a racist.
He's a good Christian man. He's. If he was a racist, I wouldn't be his friend. I'm not a racist. I have relatives, brother-in-laws, nieces, nephews that are black. Okay.
But you do realize that language, I have a friend that's black, I have a family member that's black, a lot of people see that as somebody who's trying to cover up racist beliefs.
Just you saying that makes, as far as I'm concerned, makes you racist. You thinking I'm a racist because I'm white?
No, I'm just telling you that some of the language that you're using and some of the language that Congressman King has used.
I think the language you're using is racist.
Okay. What you were quoted. King didn't hang around to answer that question or any others from reporters. And when you talk about they and civilization making a problem, who do you mean by they?
I've just got to go. I'm sorry, but let me close the door, please.
Sarah Seidner, CNN, Primgar, Iowa.
Flu outbreak shuts 4 Alabama schools, spreads to 36 states. You know I'm going to say that again. flew out. Steve King, I'm not a racist, and Americans aren't having enough babies. You know I'm going to say that again. Steve King, I'm not a racist, and Americans aren't having enough babies. This story was done January the 26th, 2019, coming from the Daily Beast, and this is how it reads. In his first public appearance in front of constituents since the publication of his remarks defending white supremacy, Rep. Steve King defended himself from accusations that he is on the House of Representatives' most high-profile racist, before telling a female constituent that Americans aren't having enough babies. Speaking in Brokaw, Iowa, the 9-term Republican told constituents in a town hall meeting that it was stunning and astonishing to me that his remarks in the New York Times profile, in which King asked white nationalists, white supremacists, Western civilization, how did that language become offensive, could outweigh nearly 2 decades in Congress. King declared that he is not a racist and insisted that the quotations was the result of punctual prejudice by agenda-driven reporters. I've made more than one mistake. We all have, King said. I should have never done an interview with the New York Times. The remarks, published weeks after King won his narrowest bid for re-election of his career, prompt widespread condemnation from colleagues of both parties. Republican leadership, who have long appeared to tolerate King's open flirtation with white nationalism, stripped him of his committee assignments and backed a resolution that repudiated white supremacy by quoting him directly. King backed the measure, but ignored calls from some fellow Republicans, including Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, to resign. Speaking in front of roughly 40 people on Saturday morning, King came off as defensive on his record as one of the most virtually anti-immigration members of the House. At one point, addressing a female constituent questions as to how young people might be convinced to move to Iowa by citing declining birth rates among native-born Americans, as well as abortion. I am a strong supporter of the pro-life position, King said. When I think of the missing babies, there are 60 million babies that are missing in this society. Both talking points are frequently cited by both King and white nationalists as evidence that immigrant children will replace native-born Americans, supposedly leading to a decline in American cultural traditions. During the town hall, King lashed out at fellow Republicans who criticized him, including former Florida Governor Jeb Bush and Senator Mitt Romney, dubbing them neocons, who are trying to control you. King also discussed his effort to bring several injured children from Tanzania to the United States for treatment after a constituent voiced his support for King, and said they believed that the embattled legislator wasn't racist. The congressman added that he had a friend in Tanzania who could help work out the logistics. God put these triangles in place years in advance, King remarked. Although King was preparing for potential conflict in Brokaw, tweeting before the meeting began for his followers to follow a potentially volatile town hall. On his Facebook Live account, the audience in the rural town 1 hour from Sioux City, was largely unbothered by King's past remarks. One questioner prefaced a question by thanking King for what he does for the white European man. Racist Rep. Steve King gets praised for racism comments, invokes Martin Luther King Jr. You know I'm going to say that again. Racist Rep. Steve King gets praised for racism comments, invokes Martin Luther King Jr. This story was done today, January 29, 2019, from the HuffPost, and this is how it reads. Racist Rep. Steve King, Republican Iowa, invoked the message of slain civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King when responding to a constituent praise over the weekend. A voter named Pamela called the congressman proud and talented at Saturday's town hall event in Brokaw, King's first since facing a backlash for asking how the terms white supremacist and white nationalist have become offensive in an interview with the New York Times. Pamela, who describes herself as a loyal Fox News viewer and staunch supporter of President Donald Trump, laminated the serious progressive movement that wants to take us away from the America that we know. She then addressed the backlash King faced following his comments to the Times. One of the things that I was bothered by when you had this problem was the reverse racism towards the white European man that founded this country. And that's the value that we're built on. And we have to be embarrassed to say anymore that we are white and European background. And I think that is wrong. I think we need to push back. We need to take the power and sting out of those words, she added before chiding other GOP congressmen for not defending King. Pamela then urged others to push back and, when questioned about their offensive rhetoric, simply reply, "I said it, so what?" Congressman King responded, "First, I would say, in response to your statement and your question, Pam, that we can do the things that you described, and we can, at the same time, embrace everything that Dr. Martin Luther King taught us, all at the same time. And if we had stuck with his vision, we wouldn't be in this place we're in today, in this society, in this country." The congressman similarly commemorated King with a quote, which actually turned out to be fake. On the day honoring his birth, the lawmaker has previously lauded white nationalism on Twitter and in 2017 wrote, "Diversity is not our strength." All right, so we got Rep. Steve King. Again, he's been in the news lately. Ever since that time he said what he said as into about his feelings to why it felt like nationalism, westernization, right, and white supremacy is not part of the norm rhetoric, and why is it considered to be bad? Anything seems like it's upholding whiteness seems to be what they correlate as to being they can't be. But that's not true. Right? That's not really what it is. It's really what he said as the elephant in the room, right? And what is the elephant in the room with white folks? The elephant in the room is their belief that colored and brown folks are taking over their country, right? Not due to the simple fact of just the fact that they're doing it, you know, by taking over institutions and stuff. It's the simple fact psychologically, again, going back to 5 years, right? Why they got me not being able to do live streams anymore, right? And so if you don't think that's true, didn't you hear that it said in the article that he says that the Americans aren't having enough babies? Now, again, for those who watch my show on the daily, know that I've told you that the American was whites. You have a hyphenated American, so the code word was white folks aren't having enough babies. And where did you hear that term before, going back at least 5 years, right? So that's the elephant in the room, right? That there's this either anxiety, phobia, right? That they're not able to adequately repopulate, because even Tom Brokaw would say he didn't want to have any brown babies. And so you see that he went into this little Mayberry town, right? Right? And they gave him a standing ovation. Matter of fact, it was such a Mayberry town that they don't have a stoplight, right? Everyone, it's like cheers. Everybody knows your name, huh? Right? And they're always glad you came. I never did, you know, I didn't really watch that show, but a few times that again, you know how some shows come on and be on and just, I never seen a nigga on the show. Never, right? Anyway, I know Ted Danson ended up having Whoopi, but you know, then Goldberg, right? But that wasn't her original name. But anyway, so you see that you know, he made the reference in this little Mayberry town, the Pemgrand, I think it was a Pemgard town hall meeting, where he said to this quote or something about the MLK. They said he invoked it, right? And he said, well, we can do all the same time. He said we could do all that at the same time. Remember the woman, I forgot her name, Pamela or something, asked him a question? And he said we can, you know what I'm saying, we can do all this at the same time, which means he's saying that we can be white. See, we'd have kept on what Martin had and stuck to it, we could do both, which is we can be white and keep the status quo with blacks and colored folks, right? If we'd have kept it with Martin. But because we didn't allow that to manifest, we're paying the price. That's what they believe, right? Because we didn't, see, Martin gave us a blueprint we should have just stayed with. It would have worked in the benefit where we could have stayed this way and it wouldn't have been so, you know what I'm saying? But it didn't happen. So now the inevitable change is happening, and again, you're seeing the true colors coming out. So I thought something else that was a little bit like strange when he said he had a friend that was coming from Tanzania who was getting kids, right? So if this cat is kind of like that, kind of like the dude that had the conversation with the reporter when it was talking about, well, the white woman said, my congressman is a racist, right? She was like, that's why I don't really, you know, I don't fuck with him. I actually got this other cat. I don't fuck with him. She said, he is a racist. And then she talked to the dude. He said, well, if he was a racist, I wouldn't be a friend with him. He said, I got my nieces and stuff out there, black. You know, I have black friends. And this reporter was like, well, you know, that's stereotypical of most racist people say. He said, well, I can say what you're saying is racist to me. Right? So, matter of fact, old Pamela had said, she like, fuck it. Look, this is what you just say. All right? Just look at this, King. Right? She said, just say, I said it, so what? That's why you in that one stoplight town. See, he knows there's a much bigger world than that fishbowl you live in. And anti-Negroism is catching up to anti-Semitism. And matter of fact, I think it done even had its effect on him already. I don't think he even really hold a position like that no more, right? So, you know, again, you know, the change, man. Matter of fact, the book that was called even before I came with what I said, there was a book out called Browning of America, right? And, you know, that's what's happening here, right? And they can't maintain because, again, you can't pump that many babies, especially the way that they're doing. Because, I mean, they are bottleneck up with that, in vitro, right? They in the cycles and just constantly you know, and it's not working, and they, you know what I'm saying, a lot of money being made, but them babies is not being, so it's like, yeah, they're feeling the anxiety of that, man. And one aspect of this can be, you know, breeding some other underlying things as well, right? So we have to be very vigilant about that as well. But again, you know, racism is just a part of the change. It's not so much of the fact that people are just being called out. It's just that certain things have ran its course and it's just time for change. And change is not normally an easy thing for people when, again, they're used to the status quo or want to be in the status quo or having a, you know, belief or dreams that they were still in the days that they heard of old, right? So we're going to move on, right? I'm at the 2-hour mark. Wow, man. Ain't that something? So since we're still kind of on that there, so I got to go ahead and give you this here because, again, this is still on the same theme, right? The same old theme, right? So let me go ahead and play this right quick because, again, it's, again, self-preservation, right? And then, again, you know, white folks are feeling like, you know, it's like taboo to say you're white. And it's not really that you're saying you're white. It's just some of the, again, status quos that has been the norms that can't be the norms anymore. And there's certain aspects, again, that you being the beneficiaries of an insurance policy that had a, you know, at the end of it, it had a clause that you didn't see. And it said that you were going to have to change, even though you were inherited from something that had been once one way, but now that it's coming to be something that has to change. And if you don't change, again, the Creator has put a time expiration. It's like a what they call that, where you go and put the quarter in. At least I don't know if they still had them, right? But a meter, that's what it is. Your meter, and you don't have any quarters to put in it. So guess what? You're looking for change. And change is the only thing that's going to get you to give you some more time. So that's what's happening here, right? And so here's some people, again, just happen to be born at the wrong time, at a new place. And what you had read and what you heard, and maybe even what you know of your family history and so forth, and due to the detriment that a lot of that has caused, certain things will have to be kind of like put in the closet or not to be seen, right? Or if you're talking, it has to be in a certain circles, right? And so there's some people who are fighting to still preserve, but again, they say they're going to have to make new moves. So here's something here that I found that came across. Check this out and be right back.
There are Confederate monuments in more than half of North Carolina's 100 counties. In fact, several of the monuments are here in the Triad.
The counties in our area that have markers are shaded on this map. Groups in several counties have called for the monuments to be removed.
That includes Winston-Salem. The city is asking for a statue on private property to be removed tonight. The owner says that they plan to do whatever they can to keep the statue in its place.
Our Steve King is live in downtown Winston-Salem tonight with the latest reaction to this controversy. Steve?
Well, this week the city of Winston-Salem sent a letter to the United Daughters of the Confederacy telling them that this statue needs to be removed by the end of the month for multiple reasons. Now, Mayor Alan Joynes says that while he understands that some people hold the statue in high regard for historical reasons, it's a symbol of oppression and subjugation of people. Mayor Alan Joynes expects courts to ultimately remove the statue if the United Daughters of the Confederacy refuse to move it by the end of the month. The mayor says the city had already proposed moving the statue at the city's expense to the Salem Cemetery less than a mile away, but the group ignored those proposals. Now, the United Daughters of the Confederacy is responding to the city's new order. The group said in part, "The heavy-handed tactics of the city and its threat of legal action against us are as shocking as they are dishonorable. When so many real problems are facing Winston-Salem and its citizens, city officials would rather engage in a cheap political stunt and distraction." Here's what Mayor Alan Joynes said in response to that statement.
The Daughters chose to ignore our very quiet request and what I thought very legitimate offers. We're not acting heavy-handed. We're working to protect the citizens of Winston-Salem from potential violence that's occurred in other cities across the country.
The United Daughters of the Confederacy says the group will do whatever it can to keep this statue in place. The monument is on private property, and that's why Mayor Alan Joynes says it does not violate North Carolina law to move it. Reporting live in Winston-Salem, Steve King, WXII.
Winston-Salem's Confederate statue, a symbol of white supremacy or a memorial to Confederate sacrifice. You know I'm going to say that again. Winston-Salem's Confederate statue, a symbol of white supremacy or a memorial to Confederate sacrifice. This story was done January the 26th, 2019 from the Winston-Salem Journal. And this is how it reads. For nearly 114 years, the Confederate statue has stood on its pedestal outside the old county courthouse on 4th Street in downtown Winston-Salem. Come Thursday, though, barring some last-minute legal maneuverings, the statue may be on the move. Earlier this month, the city of Winston-Salem gave the United Daughters of Confederacy, the group that claims ownership of the statue, until January 31st to move it. Since then, the statue has been at the center of an often contentious debate between groups that want it gone and groups that want it to stay. Among those who want it gone is Winston Courthouse LLC, which owns apartments in the renovated courthouse. The United Daughters of Confederacy has said it will fight up to keep its statue at the corner of 4th and Liberty Street in downtown Winston-Salem. The organization attorney is considering its next step. Patty Curran, a Winston-Salem and ardent statue supporter, said that she and others have a God-given right protected by the Constitution to honor our dead. These are dead soldiers. Leave our monuments alone. They are not harming anyone. Others disagree. City officials started discussing the fate of the statues immediately after the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia on August 12, 2017. The Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, and pro-Confederate groups protested that city decision to try to remove the statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee in a downtown park. Counter-protesters confronted the white nationalists and people on both sides' fault. The events in Charlottesville sparked city and state officials throughout the United States to question whether statues honoring Confederate soldiers and leaders should stay or be removed. Mayor Alan Joines first announced the city plan for the statue's removal during the Emancipation Proclamation ceremony at Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church in Winston-Salem, which celebrates January 1st, 1863, when President Abraham Lincoln freed slaves in the rebellious states. Joines said that the statue is a symbol of hate for many people. It's a symbol of subjugation of a people, the oppression of a people. Joines said about the statues last Monday during the Martin Luther King Jr. Day event at St. Paul's United Methodist Church. There are century-old wounds that have not healed. That monument keeps those wounds from healing. And Jones said that the city has found a home for the statue near the graves of Confederate soldiers at nearby Salem Cemetery. The cemetery's board, Jones said, voted last year to allow the monuments at the site. Lillian Padlog of Winston-Salem is an anti-statue activist who helped organize Get Hate Out of Winston, a group that staged a protest against the statue on January 3rd. The group stood on one side of the 4th Street, while across the street at the statue's feet stood a group of statue supporters. These monuments and memorials were part of a political ploy to terrorize and depress black advancements in society, Padlog said. The statue's history. The UDC at the time made up a woman whose husband and father had fought in Confederate armies during the Civil War, raised $3,000 to build the statue according to the book Commemorative Landscapes of North Carolina. On a rainy day on October 3, 1905, city leaders, residents, and Confederate veterans gathered at the 4th County Courthouse on 4th Street for the unveiling of the Confederate monument. The statue, 100 erected around the country at the time and had been touted for weeks. The monument's inscription says in part, as Southern soldiers of the War of 1861 through 1865, they share the fame that mankind awards to the heroes who served in the great conflict. For years, based on an article published in the Journal in 1973 and stories told by UDC members, it believed that the statue was based on a local man. The story quoted Mr. Alvin J. Seipel of Northern Poplar Street, the president of the local UDC chapter. Seipel told the Journal that a soldier posed on Uncle Ben Bloom's front porch when Bloom was a small boy. Dr. J.A. Bloom sketched the soldier in a standing pose. But Pham Brownlee, a librarian and researcher at the Central Library, has found evidence to the contrary. About 11 months before the finished statue was placed on 4th Street, members of James B. Gordon chapter of the UDC selected Thomas Delante of Philadelphia for the statue. Brownlee wrote in a post on the library's website. Delante's drawing depicted an ordinary private soldier with his musket. Brownlee said the Sippo's information is inaccurate. Bloom, whom Brownlee referred to Dr. James A. Bloom, was never mentioned in any news account, any sketch by him. Brown said in a blog post Wednesday. Apparently, her history was based on family stories rather than facts. Brownlee said, family stories are great, but they are just that, stories. In the early 20th century, Forsyth County had 35,261 people, of which 24,718 of its residents were white, 10,541 were black, and 2 were Chinese, according to the 1900 U.S. Census. The statue's unveiling happened before the towns of Winston and Salem merged in 1913. Charles C. Bolton, an associate dean and professor of history at the UNC Greensboro, said that the public official in the early 1900s had little, if any, public debate about placing Confederate statues on public land. Despite their public location decision about placing the monuments at these sites were typically done with little or no public debate, Bolton said. In the case of Confederate monuments, whites were reminding everyone, especially their black neighbors, that they were in control. There is no record or minutes of the Forsyth County Board of Commissioners discussing or voting on the statue project, Brownlee said. The entire community was behind this, Brownlee said. Winston's most prominent people were behind this. But Winston-Salem's black residents, Bolton said, had no input. Their political right had been or were being taken away, and whites had been or were reducing them to second-class citizenship through segregation, Bolton said. Even if black people at the time objected to the placement of these statues, they had little opportunity or recourse to make their objections known. The statue was erected when blacks couldn't vote, and said Adam H. Dombey, an assistant professor of history at College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina, Dombey has studied the history of the Winston-Salem statue and wrote his master thesis about how the Civil War affected life in Forsyth County during the conflict and afterwards. Expressing publicly their distaste for the monument was dangerous, Dombey said of the city's black residents. Yet, we have evidence that not everyone liked the monument. There is clear evidence of dislike of the Forsyth Monument for its erection. Even in 1905, some local whites were concerned that not everyone appreciated the monument. One Forsyth newspaper man even called for a neat little iron fence around the base, both as an ornament and protection, Dombey said. The monument had a small fence around it to protect it, the Winston-Salem Journal reported in October 1980. The fence was removed in the early 1920s. Wilmington Collection. During the 1905 event, the Rainforest organizers to cancel a scheduled parade and hold a smaller event inside the courthouse. The journals reported at the time a group of 680 Confederate veterans from Wilkes, Mecklenburg, Rollins, and other counties attended the ceremony with city and state officials and local residents. Former Lieutenant Colonel Alfred Moore Waddell, a former Confederate cavalry officer, was the keynote speaker. Many modern-day historians regard Waddell as a white supremacist, mostly for his actions in the bloody 1898 Wilmington riots, which regarded as the county's only successful coup d'etat. White Democrats killed many blacks and forced black Republican city leaders to flee. The Democrats then took over Wilmington city government. During the riots and violence, Waddell told whites, "If you find the Negro out voting, tell him to leave the polls, and if he refuses, kill him, shoot him down in his tracks." According to the news report, "We shall win tomorrow if we have to do it with guns." In Winston, Waddell praised the burgeoning trend of building Confederate monuments and saluted Confederate soldiers who achieved an immortality of fame for their deeds. "I thank God that monuments to the Confederate soldiers are rapidly multiplying in the land," Waddell said. According to the journal's account, "I rejoice in the fact for many reasons, but chiefly because of its significance from one point of view. Domney said the organizers in the town of Winston selected Watto as the keynote speaker because of his racist views and for the roles of his being a leader, white supremacist in North Carolina. It is what made him famous, said Domney. White Southerners, especially those who erected these monuments, made it explicitly clear that they saw these monuments as tied to white supremacy. The year 1905 was part of an era of lynch mob rule. White mobs lynched 125 black North Carolinians between 1893 and 1908, and thousands more across the South. Timothy B. Tyson, a senior researcher scholar at the Center for Documentary Studies at Duke University, has said white Democratic politicians enacted laws that segregated every aspect of society. We are not racist. Lane Spivey of Asheboro, an organizer of the Heirs to Confederacy, stressed that the statue honors the Confederate soldiers who died in the Civil War. The Confederacy didn't stand for slavery, Spivey said. It's the statue honors the men who died to honor the ideal of our founding fathers. We are not racist, Spivey said. We don't promote racism. Spivey, who leads an organization with 91 members, said that slavery wasn't the driving issue of the Civil War until President Abraham Lincoln made it an issue when he issued the Emancipation Proclamation in September 1962. Spivey said that his ancestors who fought on the Confederate Army didn't own any slaves. He argues that only 20% of the soldiers of the Confederate Army, which had 1.25 million men, owned slaves. Slavery was wrong, but it was practiced in the United States during the 19th century, Spivey said. He believes that if the statue is moved to Salem Cemetery, it would bring unwanted public attention and possibly vandalism to the cemetery. On December 25th, someone used a black marker to deface the statue by writing "cowards and traitors" on the front face of the monument. On August 18th, someone vandalized the statue by spraying black paint on two sides. In a December 26th tweet, Domney said that some Winston residents in 1865 would have approved of the latter-day vandalism. There was so much anti-Confederate dissent during the Civil War that the CSA, was the Confederate States of America, sent forth line troops to suppress it, Domney said in his tweet. Donna J. Benson, a professor of history at Winston-Salem State University, said that 72% of the white families in North Carolina never owned slaves before the Civil War. Towards the end of the war, many Confederate soldiers deserted Confederate war efforts and went home to their families, proclaiming that the Civil War had become a rich man's war but a poor man's fight. Benson said in the email, "Since African Americans fought for the Union and emancipation, contemporary African Americans do not spend much time thinking about Confederate statues." Walter Miltier, Jr., an assistant professor of history at UNC Greensboro, said that many Americans don't associate the creation of the Confederate statues of America and the war waged against the United States as treason. One of the major reasons is the attempt by certain post-war politicians, organizations, and some historians to disseminate a whitewashed version of the war, Miltier said. Their mythical history de-emphasizes the connection between the war and slavery. They portray a rebellion against the United States as a war in which the federal government was the aggressor against the South and transformed the war's real aggressors and ultimate losers, the Southern rebels, into heroes. Miltier said statues like the one in Winston-Salem are propaganda, not monuments. Monuments are supposed to commemorate historical events and people, but these statues commemorate a victorious Confederacy that never existed. Brown Lee, the historian at the Forsyth County Public Library, said that the Confederate soldiers, especially privates, corporals, and sergeants, were not traitors. They were soldiers like any other soldiers, Brownlee said. Confederate soldiers didn't have any more choice than a guy in a World War II. Miltier points to the Southern who fought for the United States against the rebellious Southern states, include thousands of former slaves and free people of color. There are few, if any, monuments in the South to those people, he said. If Southerners who remained loyal to the United States were mentioned, the portrayal was often derogatory, Miltier said. People who support the removal of Confederate monuments should be cautious, said Mark G. Malpassy, a professor of history at Randolph-Macon College in Ash, Virginia. Those who wish to remove Confederate monuments and other symbols need to realize that they are playing a dangerous political game. Malpassy said, insisting that the white people of the South forget their past and remember their ancestors only with shame, insulting their dignity and their self-respect, is an occupation fraught with perils. It will prompt resentment that in time will explode and bring out their worst. Malpassy also had a message for supporters for Confederate statues. Those who defend the statues and the flag must ask themselves why these historic symbols have now become unequivocally associated with white supremacy. Malpassy said those who defend the statue must themselves think long and hard about offending the dignity and self-respect of others and about unintentionally encouraging those who wish to do even greater harm. Symbol of harm. Miranda Jones of Winston-Salem says she is troubled that major companies in Winston-Salem in the early 20th century contribute money to the construction of the Confederate statue. Jones is an organizer of Great Hate Out of Winston, the anti-state group. They made money off of black people in Winston-Salem. Jones said of those companies, they practice racial capitalism. The statue continues to perpetuate racism and systematic oppression. Kimya Dennis, a sociologist and criminologist at Salem College, agreed with Jones that racial segregation for much of the 20th century in the South, including Winston-Salem, discouraged blacks from publicly complaining about the Confederate statues in Winston-Salem and similar ones in other places. Confederate supporters are still claiming that no one has ever complained and taken issue with the statues until now, said Dennis, a native of Richmond, Virginia, which was the second capital of the Confederacy and has many displays of Confederate flags and statues. Of course, that is completely false and illustrates racial and ethnic segregation in all realms. Dennis acknowledged that white Southerners, including people who support Winston-Salem statues, have pride in the roles their ancestors played in the Civil War. Confederate statues are a symbol of racial harm, Dennis said. They, statue supporters, pretend this pride is not a direct result of whiteness, white power, white dominance over all social systems and social institutions, and the physical and mental harm primarily done to people of indigenous and African descent for centuries. The statue should be removed, Dennis, Malpassy, and Jones said. Moving the statue does not erase the sentiment of Confederate supporters who consider this their heritage and their triumph despite losing the Civil War, Dennis said. Confederate statues have become divisive symbols, Malpassy said. They're no longer commemorative, the past of an agitated but the present, and thrust our community into further discord and disarray, Malpassy said. Removing them, I hope, could be carried out with a measure of ceremony and solemnity, gesture of political goodwill and community reconciliation. All right. No, that was a little long, but it was a lot of information there to be disseminated and to be read, right? So again, like I said, the one thing that you get over here on the Mr. Blows Your Mind show is I'll do the work for you, right? So what you have is the Sisters of the Confederacy, again, is trying to uphold and try to maintain some of the foundations of the Confederate, again, due to the historical aspect of it. It's not looked in a positive light in this day and age. Again, I said as beneficiaries of the insurance policy, didn't read the fine print or the clause in it, did not tell you foresee of the future where that would not be something that would be, palatable in the mouths of everybody, right? And so due to its negative historical, it has a negative historical aspect to its existence, even though these may be people that would be part of people's family. But again, as the change is happening, certain aspects about certain things cannot be, again, as you have me for 90 days, because again, you're trying to suppress me, right? due to the simple fact, again, because the truth don't need no partner. And one other thing I want y'all to know, they wanted to do this because, again, it's finna be February, right? So they knew Mr. Blow Your Mind was going to come strong, right? It was going to be February, and they didn't want to hear that, right? So this is another reason why they do what they do, right? It's okay. I'm still going to do what I'm doing now, so I guess you're going to find a way to keep suppressing that, right? So anyway, with this Confederacy aspect of things, so what's happening is all that you used to hold in dear and cherish can now not be so self-evident to be a trophy case, but it has to be stuff that has to maybe still can be held, but has to be put in an attic. It's just the time of change, and change is not easy for everybody, right? And, you know, that's just the way it is. That's the way it is. I mean, that's the way the Creator created things to be changed. Nothing else to stay forever the same way. And it's, I guess, looking at it from this perspective, what we had to endure as a people, historically, are we supposed to ride out forever like this? I mean, that's the way you look at it. I guess in your case, I guess it wouldn't matter. So since we can't do the changing, I guess somebody else will have to do the change, and then that's what it is. As much as there's a positive aspect to it, how you look at it for yourself, there's a negative aspect. Again, that's what balance is. Balance has to do with a negative and a positive. So the part that you see positive in, other people might see negative in. But again, in the aspect, it doesn't take away from you. It's just the fact that it can't be something that, again, is glorified because of that negative aspect that it has on the effect of people that, if you're honest with yourself, you might understand. And again, we can understand the same thing about being proud, right? And said pride is right before a crash, right? So I'm just going to say I done did all the reading. No, it's all very self-explanatory. And no need for me to go no more on that, right? So, let's get on there because, again, I want to get down to this. So we're going to get down to the nitty-gritty, all right? We'll get to the nitty-gritty. All right. So let's play this interview that took place here. Let's play this and then let's come back.
Turning now to the group that instigated the Covington incident, the Black Hebrew Israelites. Here they are in Washington, D.C., yelling at the high school students.
Let's make America great again. A bunch of child molesting.
Look at all these dusty crackers with that racist garbage on. Look at future school shooters. That's right.
A bunch of incest babies. Biggest terrorist on the face of this earth is the pale-faced man, woman, and child.
The Black Hebrew Israelites are described as a black nationalist hate group with militant overtones. They believe blacks are the true descendants of the biblical Israelites, and many of their sects are anti-white. Many here on the East Coast pretty familiar with the group, who dress up in robes and preach their teachings on street corners. I happened to catch up with them in Philly about 2 years ago.
President Trump, how are you feeling about it?
How do I feel about President Trump? I think that white people put Trump in office, and that was the man that they wanted him to rule over their people. Right. But I think black people, Hispanics and Native Americans have a king that they need to obey. Right. And this is what my power said. Read Acts 5:29.
Acts chapter 5 and 29. Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men.
Joining me now, Catriel Ben Israel, a former teacher at Kol Sharit B'nai Nas Israel. I don't think I got the pronunciation exactly correct, but I did my best. Now, you heard the sound coming from people in your organization yelling at these high school students. Do you think that was appropriate?
Well, first of all, that organization that you speak of is not representative of the whole nation of Israel. We're descendants by seed by heritage of this people called Israel.
So you condemn these people that were hurling that kind of hateful language at the students?
Well, I don't know if it was quite hateful.
It wasn't quite hateful. Crackers, incest babies, child molesters. What do you consider that? Love?
Well, they have a way and style that they bring their message to the people.
What's that message, though? That's a hateful message.
That's their style.
That's their style, and it's pretty hateful. Come on, you're a smart man.
I'm not hateful. I'm an Israelite, but I'm not hateful.
Okay, well, that was pretty hateful. I think you would agree that was hateful language?
There's a lot of hate in America that's not really initiated by what you want to say Israelite groups like that.
But you wouldn't agree with me that that was hateful language directed at the Covington boys by this Black Israelite group?
I don't know what initiate that. What did the conversation bring forth?
Okay, listen, I haven't seen all of the video. I've just seen what was said to the Covington boys. We didn't see anything coming from the other side directed at the Black Israelites.
It's basically slanted. We don't know why they responded in the way they did. You just giving me one side of the story, so.
Okay. Is it okay to disparage other ethnicities in the Black Israelite group?
Well, you keep calling it a group. Every nation
religion.
has... It's not religion, it's nationality.
Okay. Is your nationality okay with disparaging other racial groups?
No, not at all.
Okay. That's good. I'm glad you said that.
Yes.
Is there a problem right now with the Black Israelites? Are they angry at something specific? What's the beef?
Well, from my perspective, we've been in captivity for 400 years. We've been denied our heritage, our land, what rightfully belongs to us as a people. We've been here for 400 years. We've had miseducation in regards to what belongs to us nationally or ethnically as servants to this country.
So what belongs to you specifically?
Specifically, what belongs to us is the land.
In America?
No.
In Israel?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you here are in America, and you want the land in Israel to be given back to you?
Absolutely.
Because you believe it's rightfully yours?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you probably have to fight with the Palestinians over that.
Well, it's a fight.
Because they think it's theirs too.
So a lot of people think it's theirs, but prophecy says the children of Israel will return to their land from the scattered places that we've been scattered.
Okay. Your group has been called a hate group?
Well, you keep saying my group. The children of Israel came over here in slave ships. And we're in churches, we're in mosques, we're in various religious doctrines that have been perpetrated on us as a captive slave body of people. And this process of awakening to know who we are, our roots are, has taken on many factions. And basically, they've been formulated into religious concepts where ethnically, nationally, we're descendants by seed, by heritage, by birth of the nation of Israel.
All right, so in general, not talking about Covington right now, but in general, do you have a problem with white Americans wearing Make America Great Again hats?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Well, that incident highlighted what the problem is with America today, because you have Native Americans who are speaking out in regards to what transpired with them. And what transpired with them? They were pushed on reservations. They lost their lands. Then you had the Israelite group, who we've been brought here by slavery, forced against our will, and given doctrines that don't even belong to us, and we've lost everything. And then you have the Christian school that was there, and they have a right to speak as well.
Okay. I do think some of your members are giving you guys a bad name. Let's just watch some recordings of some of the language that you guys have been using. Roll the tape.
That's right. Y'all are going into slavery for enslaving so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. All right? That's what the Bible say, all right? So y'all can sit up here and listen. Y'all can take it as a joke, but guess what? All the atrocities that was done to our people, it's going to be done to you times 2. All the cops. Hey, don't touch me.
Hey! That is uncalled shit. Get out of here.
That's right.
All right, so that's pretty aggressive, rhetorically and physically. See how the woman on the ground there. This is representative of that nationality. Anytime anybody hears about the Black Israelites, that's what they think of. Now, I know you're saying that, they don't speak for everybody, but they actually do, because that's all everybody sees.
Well, you could say that about the Ku Klux Klan and neo-Nazis and skinhead as well. Does that represent you?
Do you believe it does?
Well, not really. Just like you shouldn't believe what they're saying represents all Israelites.
So you would compare that sect that has been, you know, pretty aggressive with the language and physically, you would compare them to the Klan?
No, not at all.
No?
Not at all.
So you don't believe that black Israelites are superior to any other group? You think everybody's equal?
Absolutely. We're all nations on the earth.
Okay.
We made our mistakes, and we paid for it. And every other nation is going to do the same thing. If you become immoral and corrupt and decay, there's a price to pay.
Lastly, what do you think about this Nathan Phillips, this Indian activist who was banging the drum?
I think he has a right to speak his mind and stand up for his people. His land, his language, his culture has been taken away violently, and they have every right, like everybody else that's here, to speak their minds.
Okay. I mean, do you think that the son should pay for the sins of the father?
Yes.
Okay. So if my father, shot someone, I should pay the price?
If he's still in a crime family, yes.
Okay. What about someone's great-great-great-great-great-grandfather shot an Indian who shot at him with a bow and arrow? You think they should pay the price? The great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson?
If that people is being denied what rightfully belongs to them, then something has to be done.
All right. Well, we disagree on that. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in.
No problem.
All right.
All right, so you seen the interview that they had just showed? I tell you, that white man, boy. See, the problem is you want to try to make that black people, black men in particular, just have the natural inclination is just to hate you without any merit. That's what you want to try to infuse into the viewers who were watching it, right? You want to make it seem, see, look at that, you push down the white woman and saying cracker and they saying language and stuff. But they said sticks and stones might break my bones, but names would never hurt me. Meaning that if all that they were doing, now again, I don't know where you found that footage because maybe she crossed the line, because my brother got this, some Hebrew brothers got this term called cross the line. And maybe she crossed the line, she got too close. And I guess, stand your ground is when somebody is invading your square, you have all the rights to protect that square. And maybe that's what happened. She came over the line, but again, the way you wanted to come across and make it as that they were the aggressors, right? And feeding that imagery into the ethers through that television program into the hearts and minds of white men to make it that black men are out here being savagely towards white women. When that's not the truth. Again, most of y'all know that y'all hear them and see those brothers on them corners. And again, the one thing that y'all did not or will not put in your mouths is that what they're saying comes directly out of the book that which they read, which they study, which they live by. So you want to say that they're acting on their own accord when primarily that is what the scriptures say, and if they went to show you the scriptures, you would not say a word. So when you try to be saying that, is that the belief that all of them, and they have militant, again, in the beginning they talked about they have a militant aspect. They're not militant as they're going out and doing detriment and mayhem and causing death. You're just saying that they're language is too harsh. And the problem is you're being in the sense that those words are judging you, are condemning those actions. And as much as, again, I will keep saying that you are the beneficiaries of the insurance policies that your ancestors left, and you did not read the fine print. Must I say that again? What you don't or what y'all fail to realize is you became the beneficiaries of the insurance policy that had a fine print that everything that you inherited in its glory, but there would be a time that would run out as an expiration on a meter that don't have no coins left. You're running out of change. And in the fine print of the clause was these were the things that was to be from the generations on down. It says from the fourth to the third to the fourth to the fifth to the sixth generation. It's not how you see it. It is what has been written. And yet you keep perpetuating certain aspects as to try to do reverse psychology and make the people who have been oppressed, who have been ostracized, people who have been disenfranchised, right? And try to bring the onus upon them as they are the aggressors. They have only been on the side of being oppressed. And if you've been oppressed for hundreds of years, ask yourself an honest question. But you can't answer that with an honest answer for the simple fact that even if it was you, you still could not be in the position of how black people in America have not rose and done any bloodshed modernly. See, ancestors, because again, they knew who they were and where they came from. But the now descendants, the prosperities of them have been, because this is the only home they know. And so they make ways and try to, a lot of them, again, as we heard that word by Tom Brokaw, to assimilate. You have those people who try to assimilate, and even with that, it's not good enough. And so now that you see that the fervency and energy of those who are speaking out in the right of the conditions and want change, it seems to be fearsome to you. And so in order to not take any kind of, again, accountability, where you say, well, I didn't do it, but you know what your ancestors have done, and you have not done anything to remedy the wrong. So why would it not, as you say in the interview, what if the great-great-great-great-great found out that he showered a bowl? The Hebrew Israelites and the Israelite nation did not write what was supposed to happen. This is just what it is. And the problem is you can't accept it. So what you do is you're trying to be deflective and you want to talk about, well, what about the language that was used with those of the Covington High School? Well, I'm going to play this for you. And this is coming from your own people who decided to take in his own life and try to say he's going to try to make change. But the way he has to do it, he has to be on the other side of what you deny. Listen to his words and then see if you can understand. Again, this is Mr. Blows Your Minds coming with another thought-provoking show. Had to do it from this way, y'all, because again, I'm the most hated show in the black corner of the internet. And before I play this here, let me go ahead for those who might be still here watching. Let me go ahead and give you, I have to get my PSA right. And then we're going to go out with this here. We got to have this individual here say some words. And that should call it a show. So let's get it in. And let's get it. anti-racist activist Tim Wise. Here's what I'll tell the Covington Catholic boys. You know I'm going to say that again. Anti-racist activist Tim Wise. Here's what I'll tell the Covington Catholic boys. This story was done January the 28th, 2019 in Saloon. This is how it reads. White privilege can sometimes be obvious. The racist harassment of a Native American man named Nathan Phillip by a group of MAGA hat-wearing white teenagers at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington is one prominent recent example. Yet white privilege operates in plain sight while also being invisible to those who choose not to see it. Don't believe your lying eyes is one of Donald Trump's key directives to his followers and also a rule of white privilege in America and other parts of the world. In its most powerful and enduring form, white privilege works through social and political institutions. It is hegemonic, omnipresent, while still allowing its beneficiaries to claim plausible deniability and innocence, and to hide behind disingenuous claims of ignorance. But in its most immediate and interpersonal form, white privilege is made real by how it acts through and on different types of bodies. In this way, white privilege relies on a bargain, both tacit and active, on the part of white society and white individuals. How is the Covington Catholic High School mega mob an example of white racial innocence and white privilege? Why do so many white Americans, especially white conservatives, feel obligated to make excuses for the behavior of one group of teenage boys? What does the harassment and taunting of Nathan Phillip reveal about the lessons American schools and American culture have taught young people about racism? How do hypocrisy and double standards give white people permission for bad behavior, while punishing and condemning the same behaviors by others? In an effort to answer these questions, I recently spoke with Tim Wise, one of the nation's leading anti-racist activists and a frequent guest on MSNBC and other news outlets. Wise is the author of numerous books, including Dear White America, Letter to a New Minority, as well as Under the Influence, Shaming the Poor, Praising the Rich, and Sacrificing the Future of America. This conversation has been edited for clarity and length. Why has the video of the Covington Catholic High School students become such a national controversy? Is it almost like the Zapruder film of the age of Trump and all that he represents? The Zapruder film is a great analogy because it seems that people are seeing what they want to see. But having said that, no one looks at the video of the Trump mega teenagers from Kentucky and Native American elder Nathan Phillips with purely objective eyes. I think that's when you step back for a second and look at what happened in that video. It is obvious that there are lots of elements at work. Many white Americans, at least white Americans on the right, but also many of white Americans more generally, either can't see the problem with the way the Covington teenagers behaved, or they want to make excuses by mentioning the Black Hebrew Israelites. The Black Hebrew Israelites are literally a cult. They don't represent anyone. Their whole shtick is to stand on the corner in New York or DC or wherever and berate everybody. That's what they do. It's like Fred Phelps or any other street preacher. They just yell at people. The idea that the Black Hebrew Israelites would therefore be a reason for these white kids to stare down an indigenous elder and do tomahawk chops and war whoops and caricatures of impersonations of indigenous people is an inherently racist argument. Why? Because it suggests that people of color are transferable and interchangeable. So if a black person says some mean stuff to you, then you can take it out on a Native American person. Interestingly, the white Covington teens did not step to the Black Hebrew Israelites. I find that fascinating. I wonder why. Probably because they also bought into the stereotype that they get their butts kicked. We don't want to mess with the black guys. They're dangerous. Even their willingness to transfer their anger to a Native American man speaks to races on a number of different levels. The levels of denial that people will bathe and marinate in it is great. A bunch of white kids descended on Washington in mega gear, clothing which by definition is a provocation to people of color. I'm not going to say that you necessarily are a racist in a conscious sense if you wear Trump's mega regalia. I'm going to be as genuine as I can possibly be, but at the very least, if you wear Trump's uniform, you are indifferent to the feelings of people of color. Because if you were not indifferent, you would think to yourself, wait a minute, hold on. For people of color, America wasn't really that great. Maybe I shouldn't wear this. When you wear that hat, you are basically saying that the live reality of marginalized people just doesn't matter to me. At this point, whether you are racist in a conscious sense or not is irrelevant. You are obviously contributing to a larger problem. I won't be as generous. The core racism is collectively narcissism, double standard, and hypocrisy. At this point, mega gears are the color of a political game. The Covenant Catholic high school students were wearing the Trump regalia to be intentionally provocative. As many entitled young white people are, they wanted negative attention. Mega clothing is an implied, if not explicit, threat. If you go to a private Catholic school and then go to an anti-choice rally, that is not surprising. I get it. That's the official position of the Catholic Church. But you know what else is the official position of the Catholic Church? Well, the Catholic Church is against the death penalty. It is also in favor of social programs that fight poverty. The Catholic Church is also against militarism and war. But I can't imagine any of these white teenagers from Covenant Catholic showing up at a rally against the death penalty, or showing up at a rally in favor of social programs for poor people, or showing up at a rally against war. They're not going to do that. When they put on the mega gear, what they are basically saying is, we identify with Donald Trump hyper-nationalistic, xenophobic, racist agenda. So even if one is being the most generous to the Covenant Catholic teens and other people who wear Trump's hat and the like, it is still pretty horrible. By definition, Trump supporters who wear mega gear, including Covenant Catholic teens, have demonstrated a horrible indifference to the experiences of other people. That's the best you can say about them. If that's the best you can say, then what can you say is that their school has failed. The parents have failed, and they have failed as human beings. White privilege and white racial innocence are important here as well. There is a very good example of how in America there is a much higher standard on the marginalized and the oppressed than there is on the marginalizers and the oppressors. We ask black and brown folks, people of color, that they be kinder to white folks who are giving them a hard time. Then we do all the white folks, we are giving them a hard time. We expect better behavior from protesters of injustice than we do to the perpetrators of injustice. We are talking on Martin Luther King's holiday. So much of Dr. King's work and vision has been understood in a really inaccurate way. There is this idea that we should all remember that Dr. King wanted to be better than this tormentors. Dr. King's message was far more complicated than that. The problem is that such a misreading of Dr. King's philosophy can devolve into letting the oppressors off the hook. It ends up sounding like we want to be better than them, but we're not going to ask them to change. We're not going to ask them to be better. We're just going to be more high-minded. We're going to be more moral. That can be a very dangerous approach. While being strategic, we do not want to ask of protest movements that they better behave than oppressive individuals. At some point, we need to hold oppressors and those who benefit from that system to at least as high a standard, if not a higher standard, than the standard to which we hold the marginalized. Is there any clear example of racism in recent memories where conservatives have been on the right side of history? I can't think of a single example of anti-black racism, anti-Latino racism, anti-Muslim Islamic phobia, or bigotry where conservatives have said, "Oh my God, this crosses the line." Meanwhile, these are the same people who said during the Obama administration that Barack Obama was a racist simply because he criticized the white cop who profiled Henry Louis Gates. Or these are the same white people who said that Barack Obama was racist because in one of the bills that was passed while he was president, there was a small tax that was assessed on tanning bed visits. Obviously, tanning bed visits are correlated with cancer, and this just adds to the cost of health care. There were actually white conservatives on talk radio who said this was racist because white people are the ones who go to the tanning beds, and Obama was clearly attacking white people. There was a very interesting rhetorical move made by the defenders and apologists for the Covington teens. It is very much white victimology 101. In this logic, the black Israelites are somehow responsible for the bad behaviors of the white teens. This deflection says so much about racial authoritarianism and a certain cultural logic in America. How dare any black or brown person make a white person uncomfortable? Look, I have been in New York City and been accosted by black Israelites and called a cracker and all kinds of stuff. To be honest, I find it sort of comical. First of all, it has literally no impact on my life. It is sort of obnoxious, yes, but it also sort of comical. I just sit there and say to myself, wow, really? I do not take it seriously because I know that the least powerful people on that corner are the black Hebrew Israelites. Who has power? Me or them? Not them. What are they really going to do? They're going to make me feel bad. Their whole job is to make me feel bad. I cannot take that seriously. On the other hand, white people have the power to wreck the lives of those black Hebrew Israelites. White people, whether it's cops or whomever, could come along, sweep them up, and throw them in jail for harassment or whatever else. So ultimately, it is kind of absurd to get your feelings hurt by rude comments from the black Hebrew Israelites. It is nice for them to call the Covenant Catholic students and other white people incest babies and crackers. I guess not. But what is the history of black people calling white people incest babies and crackers and then stringing them from trees? Is there any history of such happenings that I somehow miss? No, it did not happen. On the other hand, white folks, those kids in Kentucky with their mega gears, or white folks in earlier generations, did in fact do significant harm to people of color and continue to do so. Then, of course, to project that anger at the black Hebrew Israelites onto Native people is even more absurd and more indicative of the larger disease in which people of color are interchangeable. If one of them insults us white people, then we can take out our anger and aggression on everybody else. This is the real problem. If black and brown folks thought oppression was being made uncomfortable, which is the excuse being made for and by the Covenant kids, then there would be literally no second of the day when a person of color would say that they weren't being actively oppressed. Because discomfort is a movement, by movement reality in black and brown life. For white folks, it's like, oh my God, you made me think about things I don't want to think about, and therefore I'm oppressed. That is evidence of privilege. That is evidence of entitlement. Then there is the photo of white students at Covenant Catholic High School wearing blackface at a basketball game. There's nothing ambiguous about wearing blackface. They were playing against a team which had African American players. Number one, you are in some sense mocking the team you're playing. Number two, you're obvious to the history, oblivious to the history of blackface as a racist performance. Even if you want to read it in the most generous way, These are people who are utterly ignorant and indifferent to the history of racism in America. Again, the school is failing in its obligations. The parents are utter failures as parents. The children are not being challenged at all to understand or think about the history and the legacy of racism in America. Going back to the hypocrisy and double standard, if it was a mob of 50 to 70 black or Hispanic or Muslim young people, hell, I'll even say Democrats or gays and lesbians who acted out against a white, older Trump supporter, there would be a moral panic led by Fox News and Donald Trump. But by comparison, questions are never asked about. What is going on in the white community? Or what is wrong with the white homes? Or where are the white leaders? Or what is being taught in white schools when there is bad behavior by white young people or adults? The vast majority of white families really do not think about, connect to, or spend any significant amount of time worrying about racial inequality and the legacy of racism in America. That is sad, pathetic truth. I have no doubt that if you are growing up in Covington, Kentucky, or anywhere in America, not just Kentucky, and you're white, the odds are pretty good you don't know much about the realities of racism. Why would you? Your school probably didn't cover it. Your parents probably didn't teach you. At some point, we have to demand better of our educators. We have to demand better of our schools, whether public or private, parochial or whatever it is, to say, well, you have an obligation to prepare your young people for the world as it is. For these young white people in Covington, the reality is the world looks very different than them. Even this country looks very different than they do. I gather that they have grown up in a world where they thought they were the norms, and they're having a really hard time coming to grips with the fact that they're not. They are not the typical persons of this planet. They are not even increasingly the typical person in America. And they are going to have to learn to deal with that. So the schools are going to have to do a better job. It's not that I don't blame the Covington teenager supporters for their behavior. It's that I believe the institution and the structures in which they find themselves are obviously incredibly flawed. I want them to do better. I'm willing to say to the students, yes, you've been badly served by your institutional leaders, but that doesn't free you from the obligations of learning the things that you need to learn in order to be a functional human being. The Covington students who acted out in D.C. clearly have not learned those lessons yet. Racism is learned behavior. These are cultural scripts and codes. The Covington teenagers used the narrative of racism and mocked Nathan Phillip using racial signifiers. Everything they did to him was an example of white supremacy and racial animus. It wasn't neutral. They focused on his face, race, and ethnicity. They knew exactly what they were doing. When you start doing tomahawk chops and war whoops, it's obvious that you have a clear understanding of the way to marginalize and signify against indigenous people. You did not just use some random taunt. You used a taunt that you knew has been the source of significant controversy for some years now. You cannot make a genuine and honest claim that you do not know what those tomahawk chops and war whoops mean. If that young people had not wanted to smirk and intimidate this indigenous man, he could have said, hey, can we talk? Nick Sandman, could we have extended his hand and shaken Nathan Phillips' hand? Maybe they wouldn't have agreed on things, but that would have been a respectful way to engage, and he didn't. He just sat there with that obnoxious grin on his face, a grin that is really sort of the modem equivalent of a smirk that were on the faces of white men who surrounded the sit-in protesters in the 1960s in Greensboro or Nashville. Or were smirking and lynching photographs or participation in ethnic cleansing and racial pogroms. They're all smirking and smiling because it's fun to them. On the defendants who killed Goodman, Cheney, and Schweimer, sitting back chewing tobacco in the courtroom thinking how great it was that they had been acquitted, that may or may not have been the intentions. Again, I'm willing to pretend for the sake of argument that their intentions are not evil. But the point is, your intentions do not acquit you. The fact that you did not wake up that morning in whatever hotel you stayed in on your high school trip to the pro-life march and say to yourself, God, I really hope I get to offend some people of color today. That is not the point. The point is, when you were there, instead of saying, wait a minute, yes, we are being berated by this handful of black Hebrew Israelites, whatever, who cares? This indigenous man was into the group as a peacekeeper. It is obvious that it is Nathan Phillips' obvious intent. It is clear he's trying to interrupt the dynamic of tension and hostility. Instead of having what could have been a productive conversation with Mr. Phillips, these white teenagers wanted to stare down this Native man and diminish him. They wanted to make Mr. Phillips into a racist cartoon. White conservatives, especially Christian conservatives, love to have a narrative about family values, respect for tradition, respect for our elders, difference in politeness. Those values seem to go out the window with the Covenant Catholic teenagers, because if they actually believe these things, these young boys would say, here's someone who is obviously older than we are. How about we show some respect? How about we show some difference? How about we shut our mouth and listen, even if we disagree with the man? Again, that shows you the deep level of hypocrisy. In my opinion, they are just liars. By his own admission, Nick Salmon and his family met with a public relation firm. I would love for the Tamir Rice family to have a PR firm. I would love for John Crawford family of Eric Garner family to have a PR firm. I would love for other people of color such as Rakia Boyd, Ayanna Stanley Jones, or Trayvon Martin's family to have a PR firm at their disposal who can come and write these beautiful statements and make everyone love them. Sandman's family got a PR firm almost immediately to write a really pretty statement. If anyone actually reads Sandman's statement and believes that he could not be more naive, as you said, if Covenant Catholic High School boys were a group of black kids who had come to D.C. on high school tour and confronted 5 or 6 white people giving them a hard time and then acted in a boisterous way in response, would they be given the amount of slack and generosity being shown these white boys? What if Covenant Catholic High School reached out to you and said, Tim Wise, we want you to come down here and give a talk and also perhaps do a private workshop and talk to these young white boys who accosted Nathan Phillips? Would you take the invitation? Would you tell them? What would your approach be? I would gladly take the invitation. I would say to them, let's start from the beginning. What did you know? When did you know? If you didn't know it, why didn't you know it? I would try to approach the Covenant students as possible who, having invited me, were clearly interested in more than a superficial conversation. Because if you're going to invite me, I assume you're prepared to be challenged. So I would say let's have a real conversation about why you had such blind spots around your behavior in D.C. Again, I'm willing to take you in the most favorable light, but only if you're willing to do the work. If you're willing to actually explain to me how you can make these comments and not be horrible human beings. I would gladly have that conversation with you. I wanted to say, look, man, people do stupid stuff. Good people can find themselves in bad systems. It happens. We all have found ourselves in bad systems, including bad system of thoughts and behaviors. But my challenge to them would be, are you prepared to acknowledge your error, to make amends for the error, and to move to a different place? If the answer to that is yes, then I'm totally down to have that conversation with you, because who else is going to do it? It's not Brother Philip's job to do that work. It's not black folks' job to do that work. If anybody's going to do that work with these white folks in Kentucky, it is white folks like me and others. That is our job. That's what we need to be doing. But I'm not going to do it if you're not down to have the conversation. Now, if you show me that you're down to have the conversation, I will go anywhere at any time and I will have the conversation. I will be genuine with you and honest with you, and I won't be hateful and judgmental towards you. I will be as real with you as I can be. But you have to admit in the process of that how you have been ill-served by your parents, by your schools, and by society at large. If you're willing to do that, then I'll meet you halfway and we'll go from there.
Portions of the following program may be unsuitable for younger or more sensitive viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Remember, the enemy has only images and illusions, behind which he hides his true motives. Destroy the image, and you will break the enemy.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, and everybody in the white power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything.
Can you feel it? Can you feel it?
Luther and I, and everyone in this arena tonight, are unified by the same great American values. We're proud of our country. We respect our flag. Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
Race is when you use your power and influence to subject people into inferiority. Utterances can't be racist.
Look around you, man. They own this shit. They own this couch you sitting on, them shoes you got on your feet, this building, this school, this country, you. We're behind enemy lines, dog.
So you must first of all remember that this system was not originally designed with black people in mind. Right on, and it definitely was not prepared for black people to, in the end, begin to demand their rights and an equal share in this country which they died for. Right on. Hey, and we definitely are not going back to Africa.
In the church, we used to sing the song, "Good news, the chariot is coming." While you sit here today, knowing that you have come to hear good news, you must realize in advance what good news for you might be bad news for somebody else. What good news for the sheep might be bad news for the wolf.
They say, oh, things are getting so much better for you. In 1849, it was hitting blacks on the head 100 times a day. In 1990, they hit them 48 times a day. Isn't it better? Oh, it's got to be better. You're saved 52 blows.
The only purpose of most black Americans on earth today is to destroy.
I think that's noble. Italians love Italians. When Irish love Irish. But when a nigga loves a nigga, it's an unpardonable sin. They have blood in their hands. When we say they have blood in their hands, we are not saying him, George Bezos, went and killed. But white people colonized us. They dispersed us. They enslaved our people. They sucked our economy dry. They are still sucking it dry even today. That's white people. Tony Blair, George Bush, Napoleon Bonaparte, Leopold, Adolf Hitler, Benjamin Netanyahu. All white people, they are the same. They are racist and they are full of hate.
I've been waiting for you. You have many questions, and though the process has altered your consciousness, you remain irrevocably human. Ergo, some of my answers you will understand, and some of them you will not. Concordantly, while your first question may be the most pertinent, you may or may not realize it is also the most irrelevant.
Why am I here?
Our world is coming crumbling down. The coons are coming.
You have to understand that white America has an uncanny way of making the victim the victimizer. Excuse me, master, for putting my head in the way of your club. Not that your club is brutalizing my head and putting hickeys on it. My head got in the way of your free swing and broke your shiny stick, and I want to apologize for that.
Your life is the sum of a remainder of an unbalanced equation inherent to the programming of the Matrix. You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision. While it remains a burden assiduously avoided, it is not unexpected and thus not beyond a measure of control. which has led you inexorably here.
There are more connections in the human body than there are stars in the galaxy. We possess a gigantic network of information to which we have almost no access.
Matrix is older than you know. I prefer counting from the emergence of one integral anomaly to the emergence of the next, in which case this is the 6th version.
5 months before. 3. There are only 2 possible explanations. 5 months before. Either no one told me, or no one knows.
Precisely. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to kill you! You can't make me do anything like prick!
Choice. The problem is choice.
Let us remember that we are not brutalized because we're Baptists. We're not brutalized because we're Methodists. We're not brutalized because we're Muslims. We're not brutalized because we're Catholics. We're brutalized because we are black people in America.
Because white people made him to be what he is. They made him to look evil, because that's their role, to make all of us black people to look evil and to hate ourselves. I can't hate.
You're a nigga till you die. If you're a poor nigga, you're a poor nigga. If you're a rich nigga, you're a rich nigga. But you never stop being a nigga, and if you get to be educated, you're just an educated nigga.
Well, I'm told every day I'm on air that I'm racist because I call out racism. That is maddening to me, and I'm crying about it because it's crazy.
So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching you and I and trying to tell the white man to get this powder keg out of his house. Let the black man separate from his house. Let the black man have his own house. Let the black man have his own land and his own property.
I thought the bitch was white! Damn it! I thought the bitch was white!
That's true.
I think that white people are so guilty, knowing what they've done to black people, that they feel if the deeds were reversed, they would hate the black man if he had done the same thing to them. So it's actually, it reflects a guilt complex on the part of whites when they ask us, do we hate them? And if you notice, Uncle Sam has formed a habit of going all over the world. He calls it the ugly American, or the American image. He thinks that everybody hates him because it's a guilt complex. And if you think that if you are worried about Europeans hating you, and they're your allies and your cousins, well, naturally it would follow for you to think that Negroes in this country would hate you, especially in light of what has been done to black people in this country by white people.
Now, check it out. The white ball dominates everything, right? It knocks the shit out the yellow ball, the red ball, right? And the game's over when the white ball drives the black ball completely off the table.
But you have to see that all of this is hypocrisy.
I love Malcolm. Malcolm called me the Sunday that he died. I was working Basin Street East. He said, Brother Greg, you coming by today? And I said, Malcolm, I love you. And I said, I love you so much, I don't even want to take a chance to be there. He said, what do you mean, Brother Greg? I said, well, I close tonight, Sunday night at Basin Street East. And I said, but I had my wife book me a flight into Chicago at 8 o'clock this morning. And I'm going to Chicago, and I had way beneath my salary booked me into a college about 10 miles from the airport. And I'm going to go there and speak this afternoon, and I'm going to stay there until they tell me you dead. Because I'm not going to let this government get 2 of us for the price of 1. And I'm going to call Adam Clayton Powell when I finish talking to you and beg him not to come there. Because today, the United States government is going to get you.